Okay, good evening, everyone. I'm going to call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. If you please stand, pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first order of business is the consent agenda. It says approval of amended agenda. That says that due to the clerk added 2 items to the superintendent report. That is why it says on the agenda, approval of amended agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the approval of amended agenda?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to pull policy 320 from the consent agenda for further discussion. At that time, I would make a motion for continuance of that policy after we have a discussion on it.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, if I may assist you, you don't have to make that into a motion. You can just ask that it be pulled, and then we'll just put it on that. It'll be the next part of the.
Okay, perfect. I wasn't sure.
It's already on the agenda, so it's not like it's not on the agenda.
All right.
Just pulling it off consent, putting it into it, and we'll just put that as the first item after consent agenda.
Okay.
To discuss?
To discuss, yeah.
So Wayne, would that be after general patron input?
Wherever you would like to put it.
Or we can put it in policy, it's up to you.
Policy at the end?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we do that? That way we're not confused.
That would be fine. Sorry, I just was.
Does that clarify, Jefferson?
Sounds wherever you'd like.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the amended agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Excuse me. I would just like to discuss some of the details in the minutes from the last meeting during this discussion portion.
I just second it. Sorry to interrupt, but I think
Bill.
it was Bill. Okay. Bill moved, didn't he?
No, Bob did.
Bob did. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. As far as the minutes from the last meeting, under the first paragraph on the 7th page, it talks about an exchange between Mr. Maxfield and myself, and it's very detailed, and I certainly appreciate the amount of detail, Madam Clerk. I just ask that we go back. It talks about our exchange and says that I asked Mr. Maxfield to give examples of board overstepping, and by examples, I believe I was asking for specifics. So if you could go back and clarify that. And with my intent in that, and the notes go on to say that Mr. Maxfield provided some of the examples that he has heard from the community members. So my point henceforth, which I'd love for the record to reflect going into next month's minutes, is that my intent with asking for specifics is a great learning lesson, not only for this community, this district, and the people in this room, is that specifics are details, and details are who, what, when, where, and why. And if policy says we can't discuss who, we can still discuss what, when, and where. And so if anybody comes to the podium and is basically talking about examples of rumor or, maybe it's hearsay, whatever, if we have a level of detail in this community that talks about what, when, and where, then we as a board member, we as a superintendent, anything that speaks to one of us have that option to step up and identify who that situation involved, which then we can get to the why. And that's really the only reason or way we're going to get to conflict resolution in this community or within this room. And I just see it as a great opportunity. If there's no malice or ill intent, then we should all feel comfortable about speaking about that level of detail to move forward as a community and the school district. So if you could please have the notes reflect that.
Yeah, exactly.
You can dictate it for the next month's.
So do you want me just to clarify in this month's minutes what that you meant?
Yeah.
Specifics or specifics are details in regards to
Who, what, when, where, and why.
what? Because we didn't actually talk about that way, when and why last month. But I can put that you specified in it for this month.
Okay, thank you very much.
So I have a question, maybe Mr. Rush can ask. If we don't approve the minutes tonight because it needs to be fixed, is that correct? Then we put it on next month's agenda to be
You can put
approved?
it on next month's agenda to approve. I don't think you can change the minutes. Honestly, these are recorded minutes, so we actually have the words, and so we go back. So I don't think you can change the minutes. I think you can do just exactly what you did in this, is I'd like to clarify that. So it comes up, because oftentimes you say things that you need clarification. That's
Absolutely.
very perfect, but I'm not sure you can go back and change the minutes to say something that didn't happen at that meeting.
Sure.
I think you can easily change it to say this is
Okay.
clarification for this meeting. Do you understand what I'm?
Yeah, I'm all for whatever is appropriate
I
procedure.
think that's what would be appropriate. So,
Okay.
so then you've got clean minutes.
Great.
Honestly, I have talked with our clerk. Minutes don't need to be this long, and I think we probably, and especially since they're streaming them, I think it'd be better to shorten the minutes that are written and then let people go see the streaming.
Sure.
Because they're a huge amount of work to get this many, and it is certainly not required by law at all.
That's fine.
We want more than what the
I'm
law
trying to work
requires,
on
but
it.
probably not this depth.
Yeah, I appreciate the amount of detail, as I was saying, and I know it involves a tremendous amount of work to dictate the recordings and all that. So I appreciate that for sure.
Does any board member disagree with what I said? I didn't want to put words in board members' mouths.
There's no reason to disagree.
Yeah,
Okay.
So we have a motion made by Bob and a second by Bill. And we had a discussion. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay, we have next on the agenda, we have general patron input. First on the list, we have Susan Jacobus. And just for clarification, we have 3 minutes.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
I must be looking at the wrong meeting schedule because mine doesn't reflect that same order. So is there something different that we're looking at?
What?
Your agenda.
Okay.
Did I put the elections first?
No.
No, after general input, I have election.
The elections after the.
I'm showing policy too.
Okay.
But the rest are all.
That was my understanding.
No, the policy's in the consent agenda.
It's there. I just
That
don't understand
policy
the.
stuff.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay,
Okay,
Got it.
we're good?
got it.
I'm not sure my motion was proper because I only made a motion to approve the
Consent or the amended agenda.
minute agenda. That's the only thing that I made a motion
Yeah.
for. So if we need to make a motion to approve the complete consent agenda minus the one topic that Trustee Jefferson was asking to be addressed later, then I need to change that motion
Okay.
Or just make another one.
or make another
We're gonna
motion.
make another motion.
Yeah, make it.
Okay, Madam Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes with the caveats that we've talked about and the rest of the consent agenda minus the family relations and workplace topic, which will be discussed later.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Now, moving on to general patron input. Mrs. Jacobus, you're first.
Thank you. Is this on or let's see?
It's green.
Light's on it.
Oh,
There you
it's
go.
on. Okay,
Hmm.
hear me. Okay, I'm Susan Jacobus from OLA and appreciate you all being here tonight. I'll try to make this as brief as I can. My sense in looking at all the materials that I try to regularly do to support you as a school district, there seems to be a big disconnect between the administration and us patrons, taxpayers. The Emmett School District follows, in my opinion, minimum reporting requirements by law and does its best to keep us in the dark. In contrast, other school districts around us go out of their way to be transparent by providing detailed and easy to understand reports and information complete with graphs, charts, and helpful links. To illustrate my point, I'll use Blaine County School District, which is comparable to Emmett in size. Shannon's gonna hand out a couple of sheets to you. If you look at the Blaine County 2018-19 budget, and I didn't print out all the pages, it's 121 pages long, and it has unbelievably helpful, easy to understand charts and graphs, online links. It was really a pleasure to look at it. In contrast, we've got a 2018-2019 budget for the Emmett School District, which is 17 pages of numbers and jargon. That's pretty much indecipherable, at least to most of us. Perhaps the creator of the report understands it, but I have a very hard time. Interestingly, both Emmett and Blaine County use Skyward for school management software, but Emmett uses the software to adhere to minimum reporting standards. That's part of the problem, is if it's not, there's a way to make this so much more understandable, but for some reason, Emmett has chosen to stay at the minimum level. My second comparison between Blaine County and the Emmett School District has to do with the bill list. The bill lists for the Blaine School District include things like the check date, the check number, the vendor city, invoice description, invoice number, amount, and the page numbers. It's really nice to have page numbers. The bill list for the Emmett School District, has a vendor name with unclear references under the vendor name, a description, amount, no headers, no check number column, no vendor location, no invoice number, no check date, no page numbers. It's really hard to get through this stuff because, as I'm saying, it's minimally reported. Then next is policy number 822, which isn't on your list to be discussed, but I found 822 was really interesting.
Mrs. Jacobus?
She's over by.
The 3 minutes are up.
Okay, well, I can stop if you want.
Thank you.
Can you give us that information paper?
Do you have any
it
more
up?
paperwork?
I had two more handouts that are
Yeah,
short.
would you give those to us?
Sure.
Thank you.
I need one of those too, please, for the record.
Oh,
Thank
so
you.
somebody's missing one, okay.
No, she's.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Thank you.
The patron can submit what she would have said to the board in writing.
Sure, Mrs. Jacobus, if you have any other questions, you can submit those.
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory if you look at what's there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next on the list, we have Mike Kimball.
Good evening. Thank you, board, for being here. I didn't clarify last time. I do have 3 children that attend the wonderful Shadow View. And what I wanted to talk about tonight is I'd like to ask the board, you may or may not have heard about it, but I thought it was a pretty cool event that happened at Shadow View. I don't exactly remember the date, but it was right around in the first part of December. The Shadow View PTO put on a kind of a father-daughter dance and then a mother-son dance. The school one evening and kind of brought our school together. And I believe the PTO even extended it to other schools within our community to come and attend. And it was really neat to see people come out with their children and dress up and kind of have a fun night. One point that I'd like to acknowledge, because I thought it was pretty cool, is Mr. Adams. You know, he doesn't live in our valley. He brought his family over and shared the experience with us. And even though when I got there with my daughters, they ditched me and I was sitting in the corner, kind of brought back some high school memories. You know, we'll get there. But I really would like the board to and whatnot, if you guys didn't know that, acknowledge our PTO and what they're doing and helping our community there. The other thing I kind of wanted to talk about is, and I've had my head in the sand and I apologize. And the reason I'm here and being active is to support our school system, to support our teachers, and ultimately give our children the best education we possibly can. And I haven't done the best to do that and express that. So I do apologize. So I wanted to make sure that the other thing that I wanted to be thankful of is the board for going through the financial audit and making that determination. Mr. Fleming, Mr. Teeter, and all members of the board for stepping up and doing that and going that direction. I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this in any sort of way. Tonight, as we go into the elections, I would like to ask Mr. Fleming of you to nominate, or someone nominate yourself to be the chairperson. It's nothing, Mrs. Harris, or anything like that. I believe Mr. Fleming would be a great leader and moving forward in the right direction. I would also like to suggest that Mr. Hamilton or Mr. Jenkins step up as vice chair and move us forward. And it's nothing's done anything wrong. It's just a suggestion that I would like to encounter and show my support to those individuals and see our board move forward and work as a community and work with our schools and figure out what we got to do, whether it's levies, general ideas. So that's all I have to say.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
may I ask a question? Aren't you trying to get a recall done on Mr. Fleming?
Not on Mr. Fleming, no. On others, yes.
So you have not signed
I have not signed a petition on Mr. Fleming.
so you could, yeah. Would you recommend anyone who has to withdraw their signature as they're able to do?
I would ask them to make that decision on their own. I mean, they need to do their own research and go that route. I mean, why does that? I mean, there's 4 petitions, so I mean, for each of the members that are being recalled, correct? So,
Oh, I turned off.
you know, that person has the right to sign on any of
Not
it.
him.
I have never personally had any issue with Mr.
It has
Fleming
15 minutes.
or anything like that. So,
Have you ever had an issue with any of the rest of us?
yes, absolutely.
Okay, I don't think we need to be debating.
Well, no, I mean, he asked. I mean, you
I
personally.
withdraw my question. I withdraw my
Well, let's
I
talk
withdraw
about
my question.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, next on the list, we have Ben Harrod. Did I say that right?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning, everybody. On December 19th, my son got in trouble in school. Was suspended to the end of the week. No disrespect to anybody, I'm not gonna say any names, but I just feel like I've been given the runaround a little bit. Today is the 7th day that he's not been in school day. According to policy 543, it says 5-day suspension. Anything other than that, that we'd be given a chance to have a, I guess like a, not a trial, but, it brought out a hearing for us to kind of defend my son, or to find out if he can come back to school. On December 20th, he went to court and stood in front of Judge Smith, which Judge Smith ordered him to go back to school. That was one of his parts of his arraignment. And that if he did not, that he would be in contempt of court and that he could be put back in juvenile home. Also, policy 543 states that any suspension of temporary suspension, the board should be notified of that. I don't know if the board has been notified of that or not. My son made a stupid mistake. I was told that tonight, possibly the board can make a decision on letting him come back to school or not. That has been changed a little bit. He's an AB student. He made a stupid mistake. And I just want to know if he can come back to school or not. If he's not able to come back to school, if they don't want him in school, please don't let us prolong his education. We're sitting in the dark here for 7 school calendar days without knowing what's going on. Also, policy 543 also states that the principal or the superintendent can make that decision without going to the board. Like I said, we are on day 7th. And I just think he needs to go back to school, whether it's in this district or not. What I'm here tonight to find out is I keep getting told it's going to get pushed back. We're having meetings, we're doing this. Can he go back to school? If not, release him from this district so he can go to another school so he can keep going to school. He's also an athlete in many sports, and I know by him going to another district, he might not be able to play, but that's not my main concern right now. I want him back in school. So that's all I got.
Madam Chairman, has this board been officially advised of any of this?
I do not believe so.
No, as a matter of fact, the policy allows the principal to suspend for 5 days, for the superintendent to extend it for another 5. The board will be notified of this. We are in the midst of the investigation that I cannot talk about at this point.
Any communication with Mr. Eric?
I talked with him tonight before the board meeting. I called him. I didn't know he was going to be here, but I did call him tonight before the board meeting.
Should I go back?
So,
Thank you. There has been communication.
So yes, on December 20th, I went back to the school with Corley. Spoke to Mr. I didn't want to say names. I didn't know if I could say names, but I spoke to Mr. Carter. Mr. Carter told me that he needed to send a report to Mr. Rush, and then Mr. Rush would need to submit that report to the board, and that tonight, if we could get it in, that it would be brought in front of the board. I could speak on my son's behalf, and the decision would be made by the board to whether to let him come back to school or not. Since then, I was told on Monday that there was going to be a meeting with Mr. Rush on Tuesday, and that I would be called back. That day, on Monday, my son and I went to see Mr. Rush. He wrote Mr. Rush an apology letter, showed him the community service that he's been doing. He hasn't been ordered by the court to do any community service. But this is just his way of showing that he's trying to be proactive and get back in to doing the right thing. We presented that letter to Mr. Rush. Also, another apology letter was sent out to Mr. Carter, Judge Sullivan, Judge Smith, Officer Detective Emmett, I was told that I was going to get called back to let me know what the decision was. So I'm kind of confused on who's going to make that decision for my son to go back to school. Is it going to be the superintendent and the principal, or is it going to be the board? And I know Christmas, everybody's busy. But there's two things that's going against my son right now. One, he has a court order to go back to school. And two, he is missing out on school. So Mr. Rush and Principal Carter texted me today that Mr. Carter said sorry he didn't get back to me, that he was going to have a meeting with Mr. Rush tomorrow morning at 8:30. They would get back to me. I'm paramilitary. When somebody says they're going to do something, I kind of hold that obligation to them. So I didn't really, nothing against Mr. Carter. I know he's got thousands of kids to take care of. But I didn't really take that to heart. And then when Mr. Rush told me that they were going to talk about it tomorrow, that he had to discuss with other people on the decision of letting Cole come back to school, I'm kind of all over the place here because I don't know what's going on. I don't know if the board's going to make the decision. Mr. Rush is going to make the decision. Mr. Carter's going to make the decision. Like I said, I'm military. I see black and white. What says in the policy should be done in the policy. If a man says they're going to do something, they need to do it. Granted, my son did make very stupid mistakes. We're trying to move on from that, and he needs to go back to school. And he doesn't need to be arrested for not going back to school because he's not being allowed to go back to school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can't talk about it, so.
Sure.
I mean,
But I just wanted to make sure that communication was in place and meetings seemed to be getting prepared and.
The hard part in these situations is parents want definite answers, and I can't give definite answers. And I've met with Mr. Harriet a couple times, and Coley's mother and stepmother, I've talked to them, so there's been quite a bit of conversation. It's just I can't give definite answers because I don't have those yet.
We're investigating. This isn't a simple situation.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, can we respond as far as a timeline? Give the parents at least a timeline of when we can expect an answer?
I told Mr. Harriet that I would try to get back with him tomorrow with the decision of how we were going to move forward.
So so the policy says 5 days though?
The policy says the principal suspends for 5 days. The superintendent can extend that another 5 days. And then we can send it another 15 days if we want to, not another 15, another 5 days for 15 days total out of that.
Correct.
So he was
also
suspended.
says that I need to be notified of either. And this is the 7th day, and I haven't been notified of your extension of 10 days.
I apologize that didn't happen, so I thought it had.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Rush, so the next line of command in the decision-making process is clearly what you stated, that will be you. And so he now knows it's been extended 5 days. So I assume if it gets extended to 15, we'll notify him of that. Ultimately, are you making the decision now, or is it coming before the board within that 10 to 15 day?
That's what we'll be deciding.
Okay.
If it comes before the board, okay. I just can't say much more. I mean, if I say any more, it's because we're talking about one child, we know who it is, and so I just can't say any more about it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that he knows the steps, and clearly right now it's in your office.
Can I just ask one more question? What is being investigated? The police reports are in. He's already been to his first court hearing. You guys know everything that happened on that day. It's been in reports. Mr. Carter was there when he got arrested. What else needs to be investigated? Because I feel like
I just can't talk about that in an open board meeting. I'm sorry. I just can't.
Yeah, I think due to the confidentiality of, because it's a small town, that maybe you and Mr. Carter and Mr. Rush need to have a communication and meeting. But we'll definitely keep an eye on and make sure the ball is continuing to roll in the right direction.
Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, next on the list, we have Mrs. Montoya.
Hello, I'm not going to go over my bio again. I have a lot of kids in the district. And so this time I wanted to just acknowledge that you guys hear every time from a couple patrons that there are some concerns about financial transparency. I think you probably don't hear from all of the people that are perfectly trusting and happy that everything is going fine, because there's not a lot to say sometimes, but I wanted to kind of honor that concern and see if I could find a level of transparency on our website. And so I went and I did that, and what I found, and in all honesty, I actually knew this was there before I went looking, but I was able to find very, very specific financial information right down to the fact that Sweet Elementary has $108 budgeted for postage this year. And so far, as of this month, they've spent $13.01. That's on the website. There's no need for a login. Anyone can go get it. I can see that at the middle school, there was a media or library working budget, which is different than the adopted budget, of $722, and that they've spent $711.38 so far. So as just the average citizen who doesn't have a special login, I can see the exact same board packet that you see. I can see every month the bill list, the salaries and benefits, the revenue, the expenses. And to honor what one of our citizens said earlier, I think that there probably is some jargon. And if you're not used to financial statements or looking at those, I can see how somebody might have some questions about that or need some help. I've heard Trustee Teeter offer to assist anyone with that and to look over the bills. So I just wanted to point out that as a citizen, I was able to find that. But I took a little bit step further, and I wanted to see, like the earlier patron, how we compare to other districts. So what I looked up was West Ada, Middleton School District, New Plymouth, and Valley View. So I kept it in our area and schools and districts that are local to us. And many of them obviously have the exact same program because their reports are literally exactly the same. Like you can tell it's the same printout. They all had the same information posted. Some of them didn't have it going as far back as we do. We have the information clear back to 2012. You can see the board packets back to 2012. I can see what bills were paid in 2012, and any other citizen could. And then after that, I also hear that you guys are concerned, or that you get complaints that people aren't sure if what was promised in the levy was actually spent. And so I did a simple Google. I was actually going to do a lot more work and try to find an old brochure and match it all up and see if I could, but I ended up just spending 45 minutes total for this whole thing, from the bills to the end. And I Googled Emmett School District levy, and this amazing website came up that literally said bonds 2018 and what it's all about, and past bond and levy fund usage. And it listed every single thing promised and every single thing that was done. And I actually did not know about that, but it came up in the first 4 results. And so I guess my message to you is, once again, I'm proud to be a part of Emmett School District. I'm so happy that our district is transparent. And I was really pleased by the past bond and levy fund usage, because I didn't have to do any work. It was all right there. And I really hope that when patrons give these concerns to you, that you would be able to just say, oh, I know how to get that. And so in that spirit, I've given you a step-by-step that you're able to copy and paste or hand out to anyone who asks you. I'm just really proud to be a part of this district. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Last, we have Houston White.
Good evening, Houston White, 2 kids in the school district. You've heard a lot from me lately. Some of you may want to throw rocks at me, and that's okay. First of all, good dad. good dad. I understand that there's policy and confidentiality and all that, but I appreciate parents that step up for their kids. Second of all, I hate to correct previous information, but it was actually not the Shadow Butte PTO that put that father, daughter, mother, son dance together. That was some of the Shadow Butte staff that put that together. And they did a fantastic job. Our family had an absolute blast. It was such a wonderful event. Parent engagement was, it was just fantastic. And lastly, and I'm hurrying through all this because I don't want to see the red card. Well, two more things. I did get a text from one of the board members with what he was going to be wearing tonight so that we wouldn't match. Thank you for that. But lastly, and on a serious note, at the last board meeting during the discussion about the forensic audit, two of the trustees motioned and seconded that we not go down the road of a forensic audit. And they attested to the financial integrity of the school district. And I've stood right here and have let you know my issues and my problems, my complaints. And I'm the first one to admit that we have issues that we need to work through and that we need to solve. But I was very grateful to hear the support from the board of the financial integrity of our district staff, of our district administration. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yeah,
I just wanted to make a comment because some of the themes of the conversations tonight, and it's later on our agenda as well when we're talking about our policy regarding our building funds that we talked about last month. But the data that is on our website, the budget and expenditures and our contracts, are all mandated by Idaho Code 357. I'd invite anyone who hasn't seen that to go look at that. And again, we'll talk about it.
Your mic.
Oh, thanks. Sorry. And I invite anyone to go look at that 33357, and it sets forth what is required. And again, we're going to talk about it later tonight on that agency.
Speak into the mic.
We're going to talk about it again later tonight on the agency policy, the budget or the building accounts, and I think ultimately what we will have is those building accounts being on the website, as I think is required under 33357. So I just wanted to kind of lay that out. Mr. Rush was receptive to that conversation last month, and I appreciate it being on the agenda tonight, so we can talk about it as we get down the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving on. Elections. We're going to be setting up for all of our chair, vice chair, bill list, all the lists here. So first one, appointment of board chair. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chairman, I would move to appoint Jody Harris as the chairman of the school board.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Who was that?
Bill,
Thank you.
Bill Hamilton.
Any discussion?
Question.
Yes.
In this process, is there a nomination and then a second and then an approval of the initial nomination, or is there multiple nominations for? I just want to clarify that for the people in the audience.
Well, the specific term I have learned is the appointment. So we have to say appointment, meaning just one person.
Okay.
He can make a suggestion too if he wants, but that's up to
Right. Okay.
the board as how they want to handle it.
That was my only question. Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, moving on. We have appointment of board vice chair.
Madam Chairman, I would move to appoint or elect Bill Hamilton as the vice chair.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nay?
I'm sure your mic's on.
Said nay. Next, we have appointment of bill list reviewer.
Madam Chair, I'd make a motion for Bob Teeter to continue in that role.
I second.
Have some conversation?
No.
I would just like to make a recommendation. I'm not going to be here for every month. And so I'm going to need some backup, but I would like to suggest that we have two people for that position, one on odd months and one on even months, and we can train. Not that I'm willing to do it, but I'm just not going to be here for a couple of months.
So you need an assistant?
Well, yeah, my thought was the odd and even would work out for me, or, just to be able to train somebody to take over for the month or two that I might not be available.
I would recommend the new board members.
Well, I was going to recommend Jefferson Jenkins to be the assistant.
Are you okay with that, Jefferson?
Sure.
So we have a motion to appoint as the bill list reviewer, Bob. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
And that was Bill.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We vote on the next one, on the second bill reviewer. Okay, so on the second bill reviewers as backup, we have a motion to appoint.
Jefferson Jenkins.
Is there a second?
Was that Bill? That was Bob, right?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, D, appointment of PERDA board members.
Madam Chair, I will recuse myself from any nominations for this.
Okay. So we already have one board member. Are you willing to stay on?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so are we voting for two board members?
Madam Chairman, you have two on. PERDA's current charter, what do you call that thing? Says one board member on it, and I think they've said to have two, so I think it's the decision of this board if you want one or two.
Two? So,
I would make a motion that we appoint Bill Hamilton as the second board member for the PERDA board.
I second. I can second.
You can. Now, is Bob is on there already,
Yes.
and is remaining one?
We still need to have a motion and a second for
We
that.
do need a motion for him as well. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, please.
You can put it in the same motion.
You could.
I would nominate Bob Teeter.
Is there a second on Bob?
Second.
We have Bill and Bob for the board members.
And seconded was Ralph.
Any discussion?
And Bob did Bill. And you seconded his, right?
Yes.
Okay, sorry.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, E, appointment of high school attendance committee. I do not know who the current, is it?
I am. But I do not want to be considered for it.
Do we have any interest in sitting on the high school attendance committee?
I would say that this is one of the more enjoyable parts of being on the board. I enjoyed very much 2 years of working with the staff of the high school. And it's a really good opportunity to see some of the inner workings of the high school and the interaction with the students. And I'd highly recommend it to somebody.
I'll volunteer for that position.
Do we make a motion?
Nominate Bob Teeter for the position of the high school attendance committee.
I'll second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
F, appointment of Black Canyon High School and Middle School Attendance Committee.
Madam Chairman, who is on that now?
So right now it's Bob.
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, I would like to appoint Jefferson Jenkins for the Black Canyon High School, Middle School Attendance Committee.
I second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, G, appointment of Cheryl Lemunion as treasurer.
Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we appoint Cheryl Lemunion as our board treasurer.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
H, appointment of Heather Vaughn as clerk.
Madam Chairman, I make the motion that we appoint Heather Vaughn as clerk to the board.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. I is established date, time, and location for regular meetings for the year. So I know we have talked about having different locations for our board meetings. Certainly don't go up to Ola in the winter, but having middle school or high school so we can rotate, and we've talked about that in the past.
And Madam Chairman, I would like to make a suggestion that we alternate odd and even months, with the odd months being at this location and the even months being at other locations. So that would be 6 and 6, with alternating between our outlying areas. We have Shadow Butte, middle school, the high school, Carberry, Sweet, and Ola. So it's 6 different venues. We could rotate between those 6.
Yes.
Madam Chair, yes. Just speaking from experience, I think the intent of this is definitely the right intent. I know with our Chamber of Commerce board here, we tried to move meetings around just to better represent our membership base. At the end of the day, sometimes people prefer consistency over the lofty goal of moving things around, but I'm all for what everybody thinks is best. Probably my primary question would be for Mr. Loftus. What kind of logistical nightmare does that potentially create for yourself or your department?
The camera's mobile. We just have to pull the cabling and then the table mics, but your microphones that tie into the PA that ties into the speakers, we don't have that type set up anywhere else for a local broadcast for every member. I don't think any of the schools have an 8 mic setup. So, I mean, a couple of mics you could share. It would just be difficult for the patrons in those areas to hear you.
Okay, yeah. I guess we're game for it. I guess it just won't be the same. But anyway,
It would not be my preference from a technical point of view.
Any discussion on locations? Do you have any other ideas?
Madam Chair, I'm sorry. So we're right now, this item says established date, time, which I assume would generally be 7 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
and location. Does the date take any account into frequency, or does this board not want to entertain moving to more than one meeting per month?
We've had that on the agenda too.
Yeah, well, we had it on the agenda, I believe, last month, and it got
Moved.
continuance to this month. My whole point to that, if the board wants to consider it, is the best level of governance allowed to ourselves and to the people in the seats out there as far as if we wanted to consider one meeting a month that was informational only, and then the other meeting would be action item, loaded with action items. So we keep the meetings to within a few hours per session.
Madam Chairman. Our agenda tonight, we're really operating under, this is the annual meeting of the board. Our policy is 264. It requires us to meet in July, but of course the law changed. And this is really considered our annual meeting where we are electing new officers, and the law requires us, as does our policy, to establish a regular monthly school board meeting date, time, and location for the year. And so I agree with the concept of being mobile. I think that's healthy. I think it gets the community, us, into the facilities that are certainly one of the foremost issues facing this board and the district and the community right now. So I'm in favor of that. I like Mr. Teeter's idea. I think we just need to make sure we identify tonight, the locations, and then as far as and date and time, I've been advocating that this meeting be moved to a Wednesday night. I don't see anything in our policy that prohibits that or that requires us to meet on a Thursday. I've said in previous meetings why I like Wednesday over Thursday, but just in summary, it's because there are a lot of school activities that occur on Thursday, whether it's school sports or band concerts and those sorts of things. It seems like Thursday is a busy night. And we have a lot of administrators that are required to be here or choose to be here that are here instead of at those events. And I think that there's less of those kinds of things occurring on a Wednesday night. And so I would ask the board to at least have a conversation about that, as I would be in favor of moving us to a Wednesday night. As to the third issue, that being, do we want to, at this point, have two meetings or schedule two meetings? I think the board can always, my suggestion, my preference would be that we have one meeting a month. We do what we're required to do, identify the time, place, and location. And then as our business dictates, that we can always identify or call for another meeting to occur as the issues become necessary for us to do that. And I think as we look at the next 5 months leading up to a bond election in May, it very well may be that we want to have a more meeting once a month, but we can, I think, make that decision as a board each month if we want to have a special meeting in a couple weeks, and we can talk about it and go through the notice process to make that happen. So those are my comments, Madam Clerk.
So, Madam Chairman, if I may just put the law up here for you, if that would be okay. The law says in the chapter or the paragraph right before this is at the annual meeting you will do this. So that's what it is. And then it says regular meetings of each board of the school district trustees shall be held monthly on a uniform day, a uniform week as determined at the annual meeting. It doesn't actually say the location in there. I noticed that in the law. I read it recently and thought, I can't find the word location in there. So what I believe you have to do tonight is decide when the regular meeting is, and that is a monthly meeting that's required, and it has to be on a uniform date and a uniform week. So Wednesday, Thursday, I'm not, whatever day you pick, but that's just a legal requirement. It fits well with what you were saying. So I don't disagree with that. But I thought it was interesting, just so you know what the legal requirement is for. We have to have a monthly regular meeting. That is the legal.
Yeah. But Madam Chairman, Mr. Russia, it's interesting. Our policy that was adopted in 2001 and reviewed in 2008 includes the requirement that the location for the year be identified. But
that may be just our district too. And I was going to look up the policy because I was thinking I haven't read that policy, so I apologize.
264.
264. Thank you. I'll look into that policy.
Madam Chairman, there is a policy that we don't meet on Wednesday nights for religious, to allow the religious organizations to not conflict with those. And that's part of a policy I read, and I can't give you the number right now. But it's a policy for cooperation with churches and that sort of thing. Not sure if I can find it even.
Yeah, you're on the clock.
On the clock.
Well, what about the time? 7 o'clock works. We can get that down.
Yeah.
Okay, and we'll have work sessions, policy work sessions from 6 to 7 sometimes. Okay.
Madam Chair, if we could maybe buy you a little bit of time, or somebody who might be familiar with that policy, but to piggyback off of Trustee Fleming's sentiment regarding the flexibility potentially to break out, as long as we're locked into one regularly scheduled meeting per month at 7 p.m., then the ability, I think, structurally, maybe that would look like the chair, the superintendent, and the vice chair meeting to set the agenda for any given month. That you see how far and long spanning that agenda may potentially be. I know that things are added into the packet kind of right up to the meeting time. So sometimes you can't really predict how long the meetings are going to be. So I don't know if that logistically is reasonable, that when you meet for the setting of the agenda, that you decipher if a meeting, what I'm trying to avoid is a meeting going from 7 to midnight. So if you can kind of predetermine an avoidance for that happening, then I would be in agreement for the flexibility to break it out into 2 meetings per month as needed, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Madam Chairman, the only thing that I worry about being the joint bill reviewer is if the bills will be ready to be reviewed in enough time for to have a meeting on a Wednesday night. Most of the time I'm reviewing bills Wednesday morning, and they're not usually ready till late Tuesdays. It concerns me.
Madam Chair, and also I'm sorry to piggyback off to Trustee Fleming. So he was speaking to a lot of the administration that's in the room, and there's Thursday night events. Would any administration like to speak to that if a Wednesday works better for the events that happen in your schools?
It doesn't really matter for the high school now. Unfortunately, for most of our night activities are because of athletics and because of lack of officials, we are pretty much 4 or 5 days a week now. So I'm not sure you can pick a day unless we want to go on Saturdays. But most of it for the high school, we are pretty much a lot of times 5 days a week with something.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Hamilton, this is the policy he's referring to as 1052.
Yep.
I found it.
Yeah, thank you.
Can't really see it. What does it say? What he was paraphrasing?
Larger. I apologize for that. I'm just looking at it on my screen. It looks fine.
Okay, that's better.
And Mr. Superintendent, what's the date on that?
2003. And certainly the board can change the policy. I don't know if that's still as prevalent. You just asked me to find it. I found it. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm not advocating for it either. I just wanted to point out that it is our policy.
Well, I think just to be clear, I don't think that it actually is this board's policy. I think it's school activities. If you read that, it's dealing with school-related events and activities for students. It's not dealing with board meetings. And I think to make the point, I think if it was geared toward board meeting scheduling, I think we'd see it in the board section, the board meeting section that is in policy 200. But just to be clear, I don't think that is applicable to board meetings. I think it's scheduling, and Mr. Carter's in violation of apparently that policy.
Maybe a policy we want to look at it.
Yeah, but Madam Chairman, I mean, I don't, if the consensus of the group is to continue meeting on a Thursday or another day besides Wednesday, I'm not. Yeah, I'm just throwing that out from an observation, and so.
Madam Chair, Trustee Fleming, is that a prelude into making a motion?
No. I think it's good discussion.
I'm fine with either day.
Yeah. Madam Chairman, I don't have any trouble with Wednesday or Thursday, either one. Tim, is it easier for you to be here on a Thursday or Wednesday, is that what you're thinking, or you just,
Well, for me personally, a Wednesday would be better than a Thursday. But I'm sure that there are other people that, Thursday would be better than a Wednesday. So it's been a year and a half and I've met on Thursdays, so it's fine. So
no, I'm okay with it. I mean,
yeah, if somebody absolutely can't meet on a Wednesday, then I say we stay to Thursday. But again, and I'm deferring to the board. We've talked about it every time we talk about meetings and stuff. So,
Madam Chair, I think I could attempt to take a stab at a motion, although for clarification purposes, when it talks about specifying the location, I believe Trustee Teeter spoke about, and correct me if I'm wrong, in odd months that we meet at the facilities. Correct. So do we need the level of detail at which facility in which month? Okay.
Yes. And we can do that right now if you want.
Okay, so
We can be arbitrary about it.
the even month would be here.
So February would be here.
So February will be district office.
We'll just go around. March be at Carberry. April be here. May be at the high school.
Yes.
High school asked for another month other than May.
Oh.
That's right.
That was quick.
One problem I see is what happens in the summertime too. Schools are not going to be available, are they? Okay.
How about May? Could we do the middle school? Anything going on, Rich? May middle school?
There's always something going on.
So how about May middle school?
Comment back here.
Oh, Nike, sorry. Did you have something to say?
Be careful with the summertime dates. I don't know what we're gonna pour up, or what floors are gonna be stripped and waxed, and what's gonna be taken down, and which classrooms are gonna be moved.
So we'd have May at middle school. That would be still in session. And July looks like the only month in the summer.
So if we moved like July to Shadow Butte, would that be?
Why don't we leave the summer months here so that we don't have to interfere with the payments?
Okay, I can do that.
So June, July, and August.
June, July, August is here.
Well, then that disturbs the 6 schools.
Well, you would do September and October.
So it'd be September like Shadow Butte, October Ola,
Well,
November Sweet.
you're getting close to possible snow. Got to keep that in mind.
You're not gonna fit everybody in that building, so the community center and probably have that lined up with them, because you're not gonna fit everybody in that whole school.
That's probably not an issue.
You have to submit it.
Well, my only point was that we were talking about even odd, and now we've.
Okay, so let's go back. May would be the middle school. June, district office. July, district office. August, district office. September, Shadow Butte.
Maybe make that Ola, just to
September,
Heather
Ola, because of weather.
And then Sweet for
And then
October.
Sweet for October. And then
Shadow Butte.
Shadow Butte. And then we're back here.
Back here for December. And we can always call it Black Canyon for one of these months. And that would be it, even on.
Yeah, because the high school.
I'm getting dirty looks back here from a couple of people sitting there. Oh, where's the high school? Where is it?
It's on Saturday.
Where is the high school?
If there is a month that you need at the high school, other than
Should we do-
just the road.
Well, we could put you in July if that's fine. That breaks it up perfectly.
So, Madam Chairman, I think the board needs to understand that you need to respect the ability for us to do the type of maintenance we have to do in the buildings in the summer. And I don't think that having a board meeting in one of these buildings in the summer just to have it is appropriate. We're stripping floors, we're moving all the furniture out, and then asking our staff to go in and set up a special room for you for a meeting is a lot of extra room and expense. And I just would ask you to really respect our ability to get that job done in the summer.
So we get to high school in January?
Sure.
Be good.
January, or I can do it next month.
It's the annual meeting.
Or we could do December, it was December, we could do December and then have the annual meeting back here
Okay.
at the district office. We have the months, we have the time, we have the locations, and
The motion.
we need to do, we settled for Wednesdays.
I'm okay with that. Sure.
Jefferson, do you have something?
No, I mean, either trustee Teeter can make the entire motion, or if you give me your notes, I'll make the motion.
This probably becomes a record, so I'll go
It
ahead.
is a record.
I'll make the motion. Madam Chairman, I make a motion that we have the meetings on the second Wednesday of each month, starting at 7 p.m. The locations will be February at the district office, March Carberry, April district office, May middle school, June, July, August district office, September Ola, October Suite, November Shadow Butte, December the high school, and January district office.
Okay, go ahead. You have
Greg Alexander, principal at Carberry, former superintendent Garden Valley. One of the things you guys have coming up is a possible bond issue in April, May. And one of the things I'm just concerned about of the transparency of just hearing your desire, I think, to investigate what it would be like and to have the meetings at these great facilities. I'd love to have you come over. However, there's a lot of patron input from what I've gotten from this last year of not passing a bond, that I'd be really concerned that we would be necessarily avoiding some of the people who don't understand the new rollout of meeting people in their home areas, to have a special meeting, to go to some of the facilities that aren't regular, having to jump to 6, maybe having the potential of having maybe take 2 years to go to all 6 facilities as an option. But I would just say I'm a little concerned for the transparency that people that want to be able to hear you and understand where you are. Yes, we do post these things, but there's many, many years of the meetings being right here. And so for this next several months, to be able to be transparent of, hey, we want to talk about it. We want you to know where to go to talk to us. We didn't just up and went over to this other building so that you wouldn't find us. So I'm just a little bit concerned. So before you pass that, I wanted to just bring that concern up. So thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, I understand that. I think that's alleviated to a great extent though, because we're live streaming these. If someone wanted to make a patron input, it would impact that, but everybody will be able to see everything that went on because of the live streaming.
Sorry, that's not what I had heard earlier, was that when we're in our buildings, we wouldn't necessarily be able to be as live.
No, we'll live stream everything.
With all the we just don't have all the
You
microphones.
won't have microphones within the facility you're at.
We'll have to pass them around.
Okay.
So we might have like a handheld mic across the board or
I don't
whatever.
know what the individual buildings have. I imagine they all have a microphone, but
Madam Chair, I know we have a motion on the floor. There hasn't been a second, correct? Does anyone want to second that? And then we can have a discussion.
I'll second. Any discussion?
Okay. As far as having it in Ola at the community center, there's a few Ola residents here. Can you confirm that the community center has good working internet in that location?
No, we do not have
It does
internet.
not. The mics, I mean, I concur, the mics may be a problem at any of these places. The acoustics are much different than this room. So it may be a problem for the public to hear you. So just be aware of that. It's a small enough facility that I don't think you'll have any trouble being heard.
Madam Chairman, I would, unless there's more discussion, I guess I would call the question that we vote. And I guess my own comment would be, as we roll this out, we make this decision, set the schedule, understand that we have the ability to change a meeting location with proper notice if staff and technical division determines that Ola is not a good place technically to be able to meet and for a variety of reasons. And we've got some time on that. So I guess I would just say, let's set the schedule, and then if there's issues, we can go through the process and through proper notice and change it if we need to.
Madam Chair, I would like to ask trustees Teeter's permission that we amend his initial motion to reflect on the frequency topic we talked about in our meetings, that there is the flexibility between the superintendent, the board chair, and the vice chair for any given month. If the agenda is running too long, that group of three decide if we need to break out the meeting to a second meeting in any given month.
Sure, Madam Chair, I don't think that's necessary. I think you already have that ability to call meetings. They don't have to have that in the motion.
Okay, I'm just saying that we've agreed that if a meeting's going to run 5 or 6 hours, that we are open to the idea of breaking them out.
Questions on the floor? Do you have anything, Mr. Rush?
You have the right to call a special meeting whenever we need to, so I don't think that needs to be in a motion. It's already what we can do.
Okay.
There's a motion.
I just want to make sure it was covered. Thank you.
So the motion and a second. We discussed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Moving on. Guest informational items. You have the GCA report. Margaret Castle.
Hi. I don't have much to report, but I would like you to know that last year we implemented and combined our Teacher of the Year banquet with the retirement banquet, and that was well received. So we're going to opt to do that again this year. And we're working on dates. It will be in May. And our co-chairs are Vicki Renfro and Susan Morgan. So yay. So we're looking forward to making plans for that.
Thank you. Okay, next we have a report from PERDA on charter renewal application.
Madam Chairman and the board, I'm Pat Goff. I'm the current administrator for Payroll Protection Academy. This year it's come, which happens to be the same year we have accreditation, and the same year we're doing all a bunch of other paperwork, but our authorization to be authorized again, hopefully for another 5 years. You have the ability to authorize between 1 and 5 years. I have a performance certificate from the previous 5 years. So what I did was tweak some of the dates, some of the signatures for the back, and then got the items A, B, and C in there to be able to reflect the Articles of Incorporation, bylaws, charter, school performance framework, and the list of charter board members. The paperwork that we have here for the current charter does have all of the changes that were requested on the 10 areas of concern. I think last dual board meeting, we went through all the areas of concern. The only thing that hadn't been accomplished was the changes from the charter. And I do have those. They will be in blue with all the amendments for that. I want to hand these out to you if that's possible, that you guys can have at your own perusal. It's going to be great reading, I promise you. Gresham. I only went through one box of paper.
All of this for what? Okay. I was ready to hand it. That's yours. Thank you.
This is the start of a conversation, hopefully, that we continue. I know January 25th, we have a schedule with the dual board meeting. Maybe we can resume discussing some of the areas that maybe need more paperwork, maybe need more clarification. I'm off to do anything you need me to do. Our accreditation comes in February 19th to 20th with advanced ed. So we got most of that paperwork done. We're getting that done. I know this, as far as the authorized, needs to be done by March 15th. And then Mr. Rush and I need to sit down and discuss some of the services agreement that we've had for the previous 5 years and discuss those. I'm hoping that you guys will look at this with a careful eye and hopefully it's within your good well-being. We'll be able to continue and hopefully build a better relationship. Not saying it's been good in the past, but I've been trying hard to be transparent. Been working well with the high school. I know Mr. Carter and I have been trying to do some great things. I'm branching out some different areas, and so I ask you to look this over and then get back to me with any comments or any things you need to change, and hopefully we can pursue any questions or comments we need to have on January 25th.
So Madam Chairman, we had a request from our high school principal to move off the 25th. That is the cake auction that he usually likes me to go and buy a few cakes.
Yes, totally forgot.
And so, and I think there's others that participate in that. It's kind of a big fundraising event. And so it might be nice if we could move off that date, just so that we have one for. And
I totally agree. The only thing that I ask is if we can keep it on a Friday. I know it might be asking too much, but the Senator thing is in session right now until, March. And so we're moving all of our board meetings to Fridays. And so I request that that would be possible to have him available. Friday would be the best date. Any Friday of the month, hopefully.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Goff, does that, you typically meet during business hours, the board?
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Yes, sir.
So could you wouldn't have a problem if we did it earlier in the day than instead of later?
Absolutely not.
If that would work.
Be good.
Do 4 on that day?
When is your next, or the board meeting, your next board meeting?
My next board meeting is tomorrow.
Madam Chairman.
I got some good things to tell.
Madam Chairman, our board clerk just asked a good question. Could we do it on that day at 4 o'clock?
I personally don't see any problem with that. I think that would be just fine.
I think that would be okay.
We moved it up instead, because I think we currently scheduled, Madam Chairman, for 6.
Yeah.
So we just moved the time up to 4 or 3 or something like that.
We start the games a half hour early to give us the time between the varsity and the JV game for the auction. This is not, and I'm going to remind the board, this is not a school event. This is project graduation. So these are the senior parents that have put this on. We try and work with them, but this is a pretty big deal for those parents, probably their biggest fundraiser of the year. So I think 4 o'clock, if there was maybe kind of an agreement by 6, we're out of there.
That's fine.
Does 4 o'clock work for folks? If we move it on January 25th to 4 o'clock instead of 6 o'clock, I'll be able to do that.
Works for me.
I can do it.
Does that work, Mr. Rush?
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
I hate to interfere with my buying of cakes.
I'll make them on the other hand.
I usually donate them to Black Canyon.
Oh, no, he eats it.
So the one thing, if I can just expand on this, under Appendix A, it says the charter of Articles Corporation of bylaws, those were changed when we met, trying to appease the 10 areas of concern. I think 4 of those areas concern directly with the charter, and we've changed those. And then the next one is going to be the school performance framework. That was what's in there right now is the one that the last time the 2 boards met. We're going to incorporate several different areas. One is the TSA, Technical Skills Assessment. One is the Workplace Readiness Assessment. One of them is going to be the end-of-course assessment, and of course, the Carl Perkins. We also incorporated that within there. We have to turn in a Carl Perkins paperwork in every year, and so you have those all set up in there also. And then, of course, the Appendix B is the list of the charter board members, which are the current board members. We'll have to change those to reflect the new board member coming on from the school district board. So I can get that done at any time. But as I read with the code, like this time, hopefully for March 15th, I think that's the due date for all these to be done. So that's all I have for you. If there's any other questions, I would definitely love to answer them or defer them to somebody else who knows.
That gives us time to read.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, next on the list, we have Western Region Summer Sunshine Award.
I'm going to stand here for a second. Okay, so the food service, and this is Tyree White, has received an award from the United States Department of Agriculture. And they say, we celebrate your success in 120% increase in meals served over the last 2 summers. Your efforts to provide safe places for kids to read, socialize, and receive healthy meals is inspiring. The literacy gains achieved in your summer site is also as well an initiative to donate books to participants is impressive. To recognize the Emmett School District's commitment to summer meals, please accept this Summer Sunshine Award certificate as token of our appreciation. The Western Region Office thanks you and your team for your dedication to providing nutritious meals to children during the summer months. And one of the neat things that we do during summer here at Black Canyon High School, or I guess Black Canyon, the complex, is provide a summer reading program along with a summer feeding program. And we have partnered with organization called RISE. They've just changed their name to RISE. The Treasure Valley Educational Partnership is how I know it for the past few years. And but we do reading every day here with using Mayan Reader. So they do an impressive job. So Ty would like to say something, but I want to say congratulations first.
So I did prepare a little something, just in case. So my name is Tyree White, and I am the nutrition director for the district, or as my husband so commonly refers to me as the head lunch lady. I have worked in the district for 26 years, and this is year 19, this being the nutrition director. And I love what I do. I'm passionate about what I do. I love summer lunch. And if you guys have been up early in the morning the last week, Mercury, Jupiter, and the moon all were lined up, and it was breathtaking. That's what happened last year in our summer food program. Everything lined up. We had the summer lunch program, which all students, all kiddos 1 to 18 eat for free. And then Dr. Roberts brought in a group of people that did a book and a bite. And then we had the Mayan Reader Cafe, where we had a portion of the cafeteria blocked off, and we had Chromebooks set up for kids to come in, and they had to eat lunch first, and then they could go over and read a book. The Summer Literacy Project came to Black Canyon High School. Food service provided free lunch to all the children 1 to 18. And after the kids finished their lunch, they went on to the Mayan Reader Cafe to read a book. Students logged 16,500 minutes of reading from June 4th until August the 10th, nearly doubling the amount of the previous summer. Engaging summer reading is so very important. The public library in years past have donated boxes and boxes of books so that we could engage kids in reading. We feed them a meal, and then they get to pick a book. And if they read their book during the week, they could always bring it back the next week and exchange it for another one. They were so excited about doing that. And then there was a $5,000 grant from Corbin Ford through the Emmett Public Schools Foundation, and the support from the Mayan Reader to fund the summer reading program. And then every Wednesday, a book and a bite was offered by the Treasure Valley Educational Partnership. For 8 Wednesdays, they did STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and math projects were added to that weekly reading. Participants included Delta Dental, Cap Ed, Idaho Public Television, Emmett Public Library, Idaho Power, plus a lot of volunteers that came that donated their time and their efforts every Wednesday. Book and a Bite tracked 702 books donated to our young readers. Kids received raffle tickets for each time they were at the Book and a Bite events, and they attended the drawing on the last Wednesday that they gave away a bike. They gave away copious amounts of pizza certificates and even an iPad. And I do want to thank Dr. Roberts for bringing the program to the summer lunch program, and it increased our participation, as Mr. Rush said, by 120%. We also had a secondary summer school program that we fed kids last year. The 21st Century Grant Camp through Mrs. Anderson was there for 8 days. We also fed the football team for the first time, which was just amazing. But Mr. Rush had asked me, I get this every year to submit to the Western Region Sunshine Award, and he had asked me if I would submit something this year because of the community partnership that we had during the summer reading program was just exponential this year. And so I'm hoping that next year we can, or this upcoming summer, we can have the same thing. So we did receive the honorable mention of excellence in community partnerships, and it is a beautiful certificate. And thank you, Mr. Rush.
Okay. Moving on, we have budget items. Mrs. Lemunyan.
Good evening. I don't think my budget's going to be quite as exciting as what Ty just presented. Congratulations. First of all, Bob, were you going to talk about purchase cards to date, or would
Yes,
you like me to?
well, you can do it. It doesn't make any difference. We've been working on it together.
Bob and I have been working on the purchase cards, and he had concern about them being debited to our account prior to the board approving the bill list. And so we've worked with Wells Fargo Bank, and starting in February, we should start deducting it after the board meeting. We set it up to be done on the 15th. So that has been taken care of. And I just wondered, had all of you had a chance to look over the budget? Did you have any questions for me? Anyway, I just want to touch base on the revenue. We'll be receiving our February payment, which is the first time during the year that they will break it out for us as to where the funding is going in all of our programs. And so I'll be able to change that on your budget report under the revenue. There's a state funding area. It's code 100-431. And I'll be able to divide that top line and disperse it down amongst all those lines for you. So you'll kind of see where we stand in February. We won't get our final payment until July, and I won't be able to list all of the final allocations until after the July meeting. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know about that. And I still have some areas with this new funding formula, the new fund codes and whatnot that I need to work on to get the percentages. It's been a big job trying to separate all those. And so just bear with me on that. If there's a couple places that there's some percentages that don't look just right, I'm definitely working on those. Does anybody have any questions for me?
So, Madam Chairman, a couple things. Our February payment comes February 15th, doesn't it? So
Yes.
we probably won't be able to break it out for the February. It'll be broken out for the next.
Did I say February?
You did.
Yeah, March. I'm sorry.
We get a February 15th payment, which is after our board meeting. And I know it is strange on that you'll notice that, that first line, which is he's talking about, is the one where we put it in for right now. And unfortunately, until that February 15th payment, we aren't able to break it down. There was one other thing I was going to say. I'm sorry. Old brain.
Okay, anyway, if there's no further questions.
Every month when I look at the material you give us, I'm just absolutely amazed. What a great job you do. And my goodness, I by the time I get to the bottom of the first page, my mind is just going like that. And then there's bless your heart.
Thank you. And if you ever have any questions about anything, feel free to email me or call. I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Within this section, we included the bills. Bob?
Okay. I was down yesterday looking at the bills. There's $201,061.61. And I completed my review. I only had a few questions. One of them that somebody talked to me about was the Sophus Health. I just want to touch base on that. We seem to get a bill, it says for consulting January, $4,077. So I want to delve into that, what it was. And that's basically our broker who handles our benefits for the district. And my understanding of the way this works is insurance brokers or agents are usually paid one of two ways. They're either paid by a commission from the premium or they're paid by a brokerage fee. This broker works for us. He doesn't work for the carrier, and he charges us a certain amount per person that is in the plan. If I understand that correctly, Cheryl. A member. And I did some work and I asked Cheryl, well, how much do we spend on benefits? And she was so kind to do this for me today at the last minute. About 1.8 million total, a little bit over that and change. It was $8,660 and some odd cents. Anyway, so it's a lot of money if we're paying a percentage, which could be 1 or 2%. That'd be a lot of money. We pay this out at $65,000 a year is what's on the budget. And it varies a little bit on the number of people that are in the plan. So I went on the web further to do my due diligence and found that this is something that's customary. There's large groups, small groups, and individuals. And the amounts vary on what the broker charges for their fee from, let me get to my notes here. Well, $13.50 is what we pay. And somehow I didn't get that note transferred over, but it was from $9 and some odd cents up to $18 and some odd cents was the variable on that. And it sounded like there could be some negotiations, maybe when we talk to them again on new versus renewal on people that are participating. Just throw that out there. Something to talk to them about, but it sounds like we're in order. So I went ahead and I just wanted to explain that. There wasn't anything else that was out of the ordinary in the bills unless somebody has a question.
So, Madam Chairman, if I would just say something about so they actually are more than a broker to us. So they are a broker. That's one of the things they do for us. But the other thing they do, for example, one of the owners was here today working with our wellness committee. So they actually support us in developing wellness programs and other things, which generally brokers don't do. They generally just work with the insurance companies. So we do get for that amount some pretty good services. The other thing is this is a small brokerage firm. There are really two people that run this. The one that was here today is a man that used to run a medical school in California. And so when we talk about health, he's very much into health. And the other one actually owns a company called Evaluations Northwest, and is one of the top actuaries around. As a matter of fact, it was the first actuary for Prudential say it again. Prudential, I know, in California. And so top people bring us some really experience that we would never get otherwise. So they do a very good job for us as we move forward. And someday I'd like to, matter of fact, as we start talking about the self-funded program, our insurance committee meets this month. To have them come and do a presentation to the board about that, probably at a special meeting, because it would take some time to go through.
You said they were coming the 24th?
Yeah, Kelly will be here the 24th to meet with the insurance committee.
I just had one other thing to mention. We were talking about the check numbers being on the Blaine County's bills. Our checks aren't issued till after this thing's approved.
Right.
Our checks are not issued till after we approve these bills. So it would be impossible to have the check number on the bill.
What's under all the vendor names?
That's the dates. That's the date of the bill. October, December, et cetera, et cetera?
Oh, no.
No, the number, for instance, on.
That little 100 number tells you what,
No, I wasn't talking about under the vendors.
Right.
Sometimes it says November, sometimes it has.
She's looking at the blame, I
Line
think.
of numbers.
Oh, vendor number?
I don't know.
Well, for instance, on page one there, the second one down is air filter superstore, wholesale. And there's an inventory number on there, but then if you go down to all Valley Fire Inspections, is that what that is inventory numbers?
That I don't have an answer to. I've never looked at that number.
Number,
What
yeah,
it is.
quite a variety.
It might be the number on the invoice too.
Yeah.
I could find that out easily next month.
that's actually the code for the invoice. So it's different, it varies because it'll be, some of them are phone numbers for the company, some of them are actual numbers for the companies.
I'm sure references on there someplace.
Madam Chair, if I may, Layton County has 4 people in their finance department. We have 2. They have 25, or we have 75% of their student budget. They have 3 times our budget because they're not funded from the state the way we are. They're still funded on local property taxes. So they have way more money to do frills and charts, graphs. And the like.
Madam Chair,
And I don't think we want to pay their taxes.
I just got a text from Crystal Vaughn and she said it's the invoice number.
Okay, there we go. It's the invoice number.
Thank you, Crystal.
Any other questions?
Anybody else have any questions for the bills? We need to make a motion to approve the bills.
I'd make that motion that we approve the bills as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on, review of policy and procedures for school accounts.
So I put in your packet the policy around, oops, went up too far. Policy around school accounts. Each school does have an account. Each school does go through that process. And you'll notice that it says the disbursement, and I'm looking under 4, disbursement of any of the activity funds will be made by regular bank check signed by the treasurer, assistant treasurer of the district, or countersigned by the chairman, vice chairman. And then it has an or other employee of the district is designated by the board. And the board has designated that the schools have individuals for signing those checks. And actually, I have the name here on a sheet of paper. If you want me to read them, I can tell you who signs for the checks. One of the things I checked on today, and I learned something that maybe we want to adjust, is that the high school, middle school, Carberry, and Shadow Butte, all their checks are signed by 2 individuals, generally the principal and the business manager, or the vice principal and the business manager at, for example, at the high school. Similar at the middle school is the principal and the business manager. Instead of the business manager, one of the other secretaries could be the second signer if necessary. And then Carberry is very similar, and Shadow Butte's also similar with that. So Carberry and Shadow Butte, it's the head secretary that carries that position at both of those. Sweet and Ola are the only ones that actually, they have one signature on it. Pam Taylor does have principal approve every check that's written, but she does one, and then Amy Davis is the only signer on that. So I may need to talk with that principal on that to determine adding a second signer to those accounts in those schools. I don't know about Ola. It gets a little more challenging when you're up in Ola, how we do that process. Any questions on the policy? One of the things the policy does is it gives kind of a breakdown on general activities and definitions and purposes and fund distribution for athletics, for clubs and organizations, for classes, and gives you kind of a breakdown of how that is. And that's in your packet. I don't want to sit and read it all to you, but it's so you can peruse that list. We have talked about putting some of this on the website, and I have no problems doing that. I don't actually think maybe it is required by law. I haven't found a school district that puts it up there yet. But what I was thinking is just putting up quarterly the chart of accounts, the one the high school has, chart of accounts, and putting that up there so that we have that list out quarterly. I think that would be very easy to do and provide that information.
Mr. Rush, that's what we had up the last meeting was the chart of accounts.
It was the chart of accounts and the bank account list. So I've just put the chart of accounts up there, which lists all that information so for example, it'll tell you how much money each organization.
You're uncomfortable putting the bank account thing up there? Is that what you're saying?
There's a lot of redacting we have to do for that, and it's much more difficult to put up there. Yes.
Yeah.
And we don't actually put the bank accounts up for any accounts. That's not. It's not required.
Madam Chairman, and I do think that, if I may, and Mr. Rush, we've had some good conversations about this, and again, I appreciate the willingness to have the conversation and to get these accounts, because I think these are the only accounts that I'm aware of that the school currently has that are not on the website. And I do, my read of 33357 that I referenced earlier provides that the internet-based website shall include the following data concerning all expenditures made by the education provider. And it sets forth the requirements, the name and location or address of the entity receiving monies, the amount of expended monies, the date of the expenditure, the description of the purpose of the expenditure, unless expenditure is self-describing, supporting contracts, et cetera, et cetera. It goes on, and it talks about that's a monthly, required to be on a monthly basis, as our other accounts are currently. And going all the way back, quite frankly, under the law to 2011, we're required to have this information when this was first passed. So I do, just my opinion, and to the extent it sounds like administration is dealing with this, but I do think we need to comply with the law and get these last accounts on the website and comply with 33357. Now, to the extent that there are some that they're not public records, this statute does deal with how to deal with that as well. If there's these accounts or information about these accounts need to be redacted, there's a provision dealing with that. Certainly, we don't want to violate the privacy and otherwise records that should not be disclosed. But I do think we have an obligation under 33357 to do it on a monthly basis and to be completely compliant.
And it's interesting. I haven't found a district. We would be the only one doing that. So I would like to run this by legal counsel. I don't mind publishing this stuff. When we get into student accounts, though, we're also dealing with FERPA law now, because anything dealing with a student's name on an account or anything like that becomes a record that is private. So we'd have to be careful about how we do those things.
Well, if there's some concern, then I think that we ought to just make sure it's on the agenda next month for an agenda item and an action item to deal with, and maybe you can bring some more information. I'm not persuaded that we ought not do it because no other district is, quite frankly. I think that if the law requires it, we ought to do it, and go to those other districts and say, why aren't you doing it? Those are clearly public monies in the district, and the law requires them to be on the internet. So. And again, I just think it's fully transparent. We're fully compliant at that point, and then we have no other accounts out there that people can't just go and click on, like Ms. Montoya did and talked about earlier. So, thank you.
I agree with Tim. I think that we need to put it on as an action item for next month.
Agreed.
Does anybody have any other discussion? Okay, let's move on. D, proposed facilities and maintenance and operations levy for May.
So I put in your packet and PowerPoint actually did an adjustment to it at the end of the day today. So just for clarity, so there's a new version of it that's up there in your packet to get in that. Start out with the vision and the mission. And I go to the slide called proposal. So what I'm going to propose now, I'm putting that as a proposal, and the end of this is a discussion from the board. So is where we go with that. I think that we need to have that discussion. But what I'm proposing is that we split our current levy into two types of levies. So we currently have a supplemental operation levy for $1.4 million each year. This is one that we have offered for 2 years at a time. Split that, reduce that amount to $700,000, and then to add a plant facilities levy for $700,000 per year for 10 years. What this would do is it would dedicate our funds, that $700,000 for plant facilities, buildings, grounds, all of the things that might be related to it. There are a few other items. You can actually buy school buses into plant facilities, but not very much other than that, unless it relates to the buildings under the plant facilities. So just, and I've shown this slide before, but just so everybody is on the same page, a supplemental maintenance and operation levy is a general fund expenditures. It's a simple majority vote, 50+1 approval. It's up to 2-year authorization. The district has the 1.4 million M&O levy a year, and it expires this fiscal year. A plant facilities levy is for capital repair and replacement of facilities. Passage rate for our district is 55%, approval for up to 10 years, and district currently does not have a plant facilities levy. I've been looking at a lot of districts that have had plant facilities levies. Twin Falls probably has had one for 60 years. Valley View's had one for 40, 50 years. I mean, a lot of districts have had these for a long time, and that's how they've been able to maintain their facilities over a long period of time. I do not believe the Emmett School District has ever had a plant facilities levy, as far as I can look back and find in the system. Plant facilities levy is based, the amount you can run it for is based on total market value, and there's an available limit of 0.2%. That's not 2%, that's 0.2 of 1%. And the maximum capacity we could run one for right now is $2 million. If you had a bond, if we had a bond like we did last year, it would be reduced by the amount of money that we were taxing for our bond, which was about $1 million. But I am not proposing a plant facility levy for $2 million. I'm just saying that's what's possible under the law from that. Any questions?
That's per year.
That's per year, yeah. Yeah, once it's passed, it is the same amount per year for the number of years. So it doesn't change. Our budget currently for our facilities are, we have $107,109 in maintenance of non-student occupied facilities. So non-student occupied facilities is everything outside the building. So the parking lot, we spent money on the parking lot, that would be considered spending money on a non-student occupied facility. You don't have to try to make logic out of it. This is a legislative decision that they made in some laws, and that's how they defined it. So this would also include our bus garage and our maintenance facility that we have. We have about $575,670 in maintenance of student occupied facilities in our budget. We have $35,400 in our grounds maintenance budget. So that's a total of $718,179 in our current facilities budgets. Of that $718,000, $449,000 is salaries and benefits. So what this includes is we have 3 full-time staff. That is, they don't get all that, believe me. We have 3 full-time staff in the maintenance department. Plus we have a part of every janitorial staff is paid under student occupied facilities. And we do that because they are doing maintenance in all of the buildings. So they're not allowed to charge the cleaning part of it, but we do charge a percentage of their salaries and their for which they do maintenance for within that facility. And that allows us to meet our maintenance requirement that we have for spending on student occupied facilities. So any questions on that piece right now? And I in your packet is the, you can look through those numbers and see what we're spending on those. And I can bring them up if you'd like. Just any questions on this right now? Okay. Currently, other funds, we have the forest funds, which we have set aside for emergencies. Generally, this a few years ago, I think, the legislature, the National Congress, started cutting on this to zero and then redoing it so it wasn't steady money. We've let it build up to just under 100,000 this year, and we've spent about 10 on the Ola School. Is what we spent it on for this year. We will be getting more money for this, so we're not sure how much yet. Matter of fact, we just got an email from the State Department of Education asking us for the data that they need to calculate how much money we'll get. And the money actually comes from the county. The federal dollar goes to the county, and the county sends us money for that. So that will probably go up. It will go up some. I don't know the number amount. I'm guessing 25,000. That's about what it's been. So we also have a bond fund, and that's been set aside for the middle school roof, and there's $202,339 in that bond fund. Our state requirement. So we're required to spend $611,654 on student occupied facilities each year. You'll notice our number is a little less than that. But we also are spending some of those forest funds, so we're pretty close. We might have to, if we don't spend every dollar of that, we just have to set it aside and put it in next year's budget. So it's what we have to do for that. So there's no problem getting that done in that. Questions on this part?
Your 611, is that what you consider the maintenance?
Yeah, it's called maintenance of student occupied facilities. It's the history of it is that the state lost a lawsuit on funding of schools, and facilities was a part of that lawsuit. And so the legislature came in with this bill to say every district has to spend so much money district-wide on their facilities.
So you're saying we're spending $575 plus the forced money?
Plus the money in the forest for this year. And if we don't quite reach the number, we can either set it aside or we do have some expenses that are coming out. We might, go over. I think we spent $8,000 on a well at Shadow Butte this year. It was a surprise for us. One day we had no school that day when the well went out, and there was a fine pump company that came along and pulled it and got it fixed for us. We really do appreciate that. But those emergencies come along quite often, unfortunately. Other questions?
Are we keeping up with our maintenance of that funding, or are we falling short?
We're falling short. We're falling short. We need to, we have a lot of projects to go in there, and I've got that list to come up, so we'll go through that in a little bit of all the types of projects we have. And there are some larger bills coming down the road. We've got 2 boilers at Shadow Butte and Carberry that are quickly approaching 20 years. And unfortunately, these boilers have not lasted well in any building that they've been put in. Because I wish the district would have known that 20 years ago, but nobody did. And so we're expecting to have to replace those. We have some challenges. If you've been in Shadow Butte or Carberry this year, every now and then the fire system floods, the pipes flood, and the alarms go off and the fire trucks show up. And it's quite a process. And what's happening is our pipes are rusting. And so we put Band-Aids on them. It's a very expensive, fancy Band-Aid that we do on to repair them. But the company that we're working with says that when you have 2 Band-Aids in a section, it's time to replace that section of pipe. So we're going to have to start replacing sections of pipe. That's not a cheap process. That's going to that's going to do it. So there are those types of things, and those are just a couple of examples. We'll get into the longer list here in a minute. We've improved a lot. I just have to tell you, our maintenance department is doing a great job of really getting things done. They have done a much better job of just maintenance of items. In the past few years, changing filters is a huge benefit to keeping equipment running a long time, and they've really stepped up to make sure that all of those things are happening. So there are real positive pieces to this. Where does the money come from? That'd be the next question. So in our current budget, we have a maintenance and operation levy that we put $400,000 in. So for the past few years, we've been funding about $400,000 in our maintenance and operation levy to help cover the cost of $718,000 on the page before. We receive, and this is this year's number. Last year it was probably $5,000 less, I think, but it's $147,270 from lottery funds. We received $40,000 what's called maintenance match. It's part of that agreement on the settlement is that we get a little extra money for maintenance match funds. It's tied in with the lottery funds from the state. And then we pull out of what we call our base support general fund. That line I said where we're putting all the items in, that's called the base support fund. And so we're pulling out $130,762 to come up with our $718,000. Any questions on where the money's coming from? Okay. So proposed plant facilities, proposing a 10-year levy that we can go through that. And I've put in your packet a master project list. So we've always had a project list that we've worked from. I've never called it the master project list yet, but it's been in the forever. I don't know, forever. I guess forever since I've been here, we've had a project list that we've worked off of. What we've done this year is just go back through and combine all of the lists that we had. Now, this master project list we're putting everything on it that we want to keep on it. That doesn't mean we're going to do every item on it. If we pass a bond and decide to build a building, and that may affect some of these items that we have on it. But we want to make sure we don't lose items off the list so we forget, oh no, we forgot all about that we needed to fix. And there are things that we have, even after I finished printing it, I think within an hour, we were thinking, oh, I forgot whether we got it on here, but we forgot the parking lot at Sweet. Okay, so we will continue to add, and that is the process of maintenance. You will continue to add to this list as we identify items and as issues come up. We also know we need to add items. We have some special ed rooms that need to be ready rooms that we need to work on within our district. We're just finishing one at Carberry, and we'll have to add one at the middle school and probably here. So we know there are items that we still have to add on this. The dollar amounts on here are estimates, and we know they're estimates, and we, as we move through and get to an item. A good one to talk about is, for example, is the roof at middle school gym that needs to be replaced. The item in here is an estimate that we have on that. We have had 6 contractors stand up on that roof and look at it and decide, tell us what we need to have. We've got core samples done that we've done on that roof. We have done actually have quite a bit of it ready. Now we're ready to actually write the document, which is your bid document. So that gets a very formal legal document when you get into a big document. It has all the requirements that we have when we go into a bid. It has things that in the bid document will say it has to be done by this date. And if it's not done by this date, here's a penalty that we charge. And we've had those types of things in our bid documents in the past. So we get into these larger projects like that. This is what it is. And so we're ready to move forward on that if the board wants to approve that. But that's just a good example of an item that we do. We do estimations, and then we know I guess the only thing I really know about estimations is they're wrong. We just don't know how far they're wrong as we get into it. And when you're doing a 10-year plan, you know that you're not going to know the estimations when you're 5 years out. You're going to get less accurate.
Madam Chairman, Wayne, on your estimations, how old are these figures when you're doing this? Is this a year old or?
These figures, a lot of these came from our work on the bond last year. So these were put together about a year ago, November, December last year. So they're just over a year old. So they've probably gone up since then.
Is it fair to say that there's maybe as much as like 20% add-on because of the construction industry and the cost of materials right now?
Depending on what item it is, there may be that much, and it may be less than that, as a matter of fact. And so one of the things that's driving cost of materials right now is a tariff on steel. So if you're talking about something on steel that didn't have, that's probably going to have more money involved in it than if you're dealing in plastics or wood or some other situation. So there certainly are differences that we do it. But of course, these are estimates that we would use as we decide on what the projects are for next year. We will then go out to write specs for that specific project, and we go out for a specific bid on that project. So
I guess my main concern or reason for asking the question, I'd hate to fall short. If we're going to go in for a 10-year levy for facilities maintenance, we'll make sure that we, factor in something there for that shortfall instead of not doing projects.
Right. I have a hard time predicting 10 years because we may factor in for a shortfall because we're expecting prices to go up, and then we might go through the Great Recession where prices go down. That'd be more money to spend.
That would be great.
It would be great. I agree. So this list will grow some, and some of it we probably won't want to do, but I'm not saying it is important to us that we always have things on the list, that we keep the lists up so that we're not forgetting items. Now, we may say, well, we decided not to do that. That's a fine decision, but not knowing it's there doesn't allow you to make a decision. So it's important to have the items on the list.
And you were saying that from this list, we're going to develop a more or less a hit list to prioritize them?
Yeah, we would prioritize every year. If we pass the maintenance, I want to say maintenance because it mixes up with the M&O levy. If we pass the plant facilities levy, I'll try to keep my language consistent on that. Then we would every year sit down and say, here are the priority of the items that need to get accomplished on this. And we might say, there may be an item that you say, we're not going to spend, we're going to save $100,000 this year because we've got a bigger project that we want to do next year. And so that would be a part of the decision-making process that we would go through as you go through it. Other questions? Good questions. Appreciate it. One of the items, for example, that's on this that I think we ought to prioritize is some of the safety issues. Electronic locks for the high school would be one that I'd like to see us get done. Front doors, electronic locks for all of our elementary schools as we go through it. So there's dollars in here. They're rough estimates at this point. We're going to have to do quite a bit of work to figure those items out. Other questions?
So at the end of the day, if we did all of this on both these lists, our facilities would be in good shape. Is that what you're? If we spent every dime that was here.
The one thing I know about maintenance,
it doesn't ever stop.
Yeah. Thank you for saying my statement, because it is not so. Maintenance is an ongoing process. So some of these items, quite frankly, we are going to have to look at in a bond type approach. In other words, if we build a new building, then what do we do from that perspective? Growth is an issue that I think we're going to have to deal with. We had a very enjoyable meeting here today with the superintendents from the Boise Valley and the Idaho Business for Education, director of the Idaho Business for Education, and Boise State, University of Idaho. But one of the things we were all talking about is where growth is and what's going to happen to us. We believe in growth in this county. So, but I'm not a good predictor. So.
And Mr. Chairman, for instance, when we're looking at this for Shadow Butte Elementary, for the repairs and replacement of the various sections of the attic fire, you've got that blank because we don't know how much that would cost.
That's absolutely true. We've been working with the and I asked Mike Smith to be here tonight, but I think what he'll tell you is we don't know how much a section of pipe is going to cost to replace. Would that be fair?
Yeah, it's a lot of time and material stuff because of the location. I think this section of pipe is.
So we can.
Well, living right across the street, I see the fire trucks there frequently, so I understand that.
So what we're running into on a little history is compressed air is pushed into these attic lines. They hold pressure. We don't want them full charged with water because it'll freeze, break. Then we have big problems. So it's compressed air. Compressed air creates moisture. It's black pipe. And over time, it'll start to corrode. You'll get pinholes. Pinholes get bigger. And if those leak enough, it'll charge the line thinking that it's a fire. That has happened several times because the leaks are all over the place. It's a needle in a haystack.
It's as if one of the sprinklers went off.
Yes. And so we clamp them. If there's more than 2 clamps per section, you have to change out that section of pipe. That's the rule of thumb. Some of them are easy locations, some of them aren't. So, you're getting above the gym, you're getting above the cafeteria. There's accesses all over the place. It's a maze up there. There's catwalks, truss systems. So I don't know that getting a hard number on that is going to be possible. I think it's going to be a lot of time and material. And those are the discussions that I've been having with the fire suppression company.
Is the solution to go back with black pipe? Is that the only solution there is for this? Or?
At this time, it is. They charge lines with nitrogen now. It's very expensive. From what I'm being told, it's cheaper to throw clamps, replace sections of pipe, update compressors.
I just recall how I used to insure the hospital of Sun Valley, and theirs charged up and froze in the wintertime. You don't want to go there.
No, not at all.
They shut down a hospital.
Are you, excuse me, are you saying that black pipe as in black steel or black plastic?
No, black steel.
Black steel?
Yes.
Black not galvanized? It's not galvanized?
Pipe.
It's not galvanized at all?
No.
Really?
It's black iron pipe. But with compressed air, it creates moisture.
It shouldn't have water in it.
It'll condensate.
Yeah.
It should never have water in it.
Unless, of course, of a fire.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mikey.
So yes, there are items that we don't know what the cost will be. We just, one of the items, I think it's Shadow Butte, the main valve that actually opens the water for this has to be replaced. And I do think we just got a bid on it at about $5,000 for just that valve.
That dryer valve, yes.
The dryer valve, yeah. So, but that's something we will replace this summer. I mean, it's going to have to be replaced or spring break. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint.
I had one question.
Oh, sure.
On the Butteview complex, I see those repairs. Those repairs would be done whether or not we reactivate Butteview as an elementary school. I would assume they need to be done, period.
Yeah, those repairs are as it's operated right now. If we reactivate it as an elementary school, it would be a whole another set of items we would need to do to make that work. And for example, one of the things I think you're going to do if you want to turn this back into an elementary school is you need to provide these kids with gym space. So you might want to actually build a gym building as a part of the facility. So there's a lot of decision making there. I'm not trying to, but I haven't put those items down for this piece.
Am I correct? This doesn't have fire suppression system in this building?
No.
Will we have to do that if we're going to turn it back into a?
Probably. There's a point where when you do so much remodeling, you have to go ahead and put in fire suppression. If you do less remodeling, there's a point that requires it. Okay.
Yep.
So goals of a plant facilities levy. Provide stable funding for 10 years for maintenance. So the nice thing about this is once you pass it, you say, we're going to have $700,000 or whatever amount we decide on a year for 10 years. And that's stable funding, I think, as we look at other districts, has been very successful in maintaining facilities. Again, provide stable funding for planning to complete projects over time. So, you've got that planning process that you can give you more of a long-term planning approach to it. Again, take care of the school facilities that we have and provide funding for both student-occupied and non-student occupied projects. So right now we really focus on student-occupied and probably should, but there are projects we need to do that are considered non-student occupied that we've neglected some because we're required to spend so much on student-occupied and we don't have the money to do another. A good example of that we have a concrete we need to change for a ramp, to make a ramp appropriate, and for ADA requirements, those types of things. And so those are outside the building. The logic would be that would be a student occupied reason, but I didn't write the law. So that's what we mean by providing funding for both student occupied and non-student occupied projects. We have some projects. I think Mr. Erb has mentioned that we've got some projects up at our bus garage that we just need to do to maintain that facility. So this would provide some funds for that planning. So the recommendation is in May to run a 10-year plant facilities levy. Levy amount at $700,000 per year for 10 years, and each year prioritize project for these levy funds. Why $700,000? I've looked at different numbers and things, and you can debate one way or the other on this issue. So I'm not entirely sold on it, but the smaller projects under $500,000 run about $6 million, and major projects at over $500,000 are running about $16 million on those two lists. We've operated a list. When we were putting this together, I was looking back at our 14-15 list and our 15-16 list as we go through it. All of those lists have run in quite a few million, 6, 7, 8 million a year as we've done it. And I don't have this in your packet, and I apologize for that, but Mr. Smith spent some time over break helping us put together a list of completed projects since 2014. And we've completed just at $2 million since 2014 in projects here. And if you look at that, that's about $400,000 a year. So our levy money has been able to accomplish a lot of those projects while paying for some other items. So there's an implication that we need to throw in here, and I want you to. I purposely focused on the maintenance, the facilities levy for tonight's meeting. I'm not asking the board to make a decision tonight, even though I have it as an action item. I think we're going to do it as an action item, but I don't think it's appropriate for the board to make a decision tonight. There will be an action item that we'll need to make at some point. But the implications on the current M&O levy, I think, have to come into the discussion. I think that's why I put this slide together. If we reduce the current M&O levy to $700,000, that moves $400,000 of the current M&O to plant facilities. So that's just a shift of the money. But that puts an additional $300,000 more into facilities each year than what we're currently doing. So it actually increases the amount of money we're putting into the facilities. So we talk about why 700. I think that it's not quite doubling, but it's almost doubling the amount of money available for facilities. But it reduces the amount available for staffing and other projects in the M&O budget. If you want me to go back to that slide, I will, but let me just throw this one up here. So in our maintenance and operations levy budget right now, we have about $400,000 in staffing is what we've been doing for the past few years. We've had about $400,000 in what we call curriculum materials and other items. So I think, and I'm not breaking this out as I will next month, but to moving it some operation levy to still put about $400,000 in staffing, about $200,000 a year is what we've been spending for the last, I guess, 4 years now. We'll have 4 years that we've been putting into curriculum materials, and that's about what it takes to do. Our next adoption, the adoption this spring that's out of this levy will be for math from kindergarten through 5th grade. Our adoption for next year, if we pass a levy, will be science curriculum. Science curriculum may not be so many books, because it's going to be equipment for science experiments. So building up the labs and those types of things. The equipment for that, for teaching science. And then instructional improvement at about $100,000. In our current levy, we have about $400,000 in this instructional improvement curriculum area. But one of the things we've accomplished this year is we've accomplished much of our blended learning, and we've got all of our Chromebooks purchased, and we have a state funding that will come in, assuming every year. The legislature intends us to get the money every year, so as much as we can trust the legislature, that will be enough money to buy the replacements for that for those Chromebooks. So we don't need to put that in the levy next year. We can take almost $200,000 out of the levy, which we were using for Chromebook purchase, and to get us to the place we wanted to be on blended learning. Questions on this before I throw 2 discussion questions up for you, and you can go beyond them. But so for the board, I have 2 discussion questions that I think, and there's probably more to ask, but I thought, well, let's just start with 2, and then you guys can tell me what you think. Should we ask divide? I guess I should read these over before I'm sitting in front of a group. Should we divide our M&O levy into 2? And then how much do we put into plant facilities? What should we, if we do divide it into 2, how much should we be putting into plant facilities if we were running 10-year levy? Now, I will say this isn't the only money we would put into plant facilities. We still would have lottery money, payments, match, and that. I mean, so.
Well, Madam Chairman, my major concern is that we don't run short on the plant and facilities and be locked into it for 10 years. So my inclination is thinking a little forward, and the costs going up. As far as I can see, I don't think they're going to go down in the near future. Is that maybe bump that plant and facilities levy a little bit. We're not right now. What you're proposing is an overall levy that's the same, 1.4, and I think that we could probably get a 1.6 through or something like that, or I don't know. Up for discussion. Because we do have a lot of problems with our facilities. And I think if we don't address them, we're going to have a lot more problems with our facilities in the future. That's just my personal opinion.
I have a question for Mike Smith. What are your opinions about how much we should have in the facility levy for every year?
Sky's the limit for me.
I know.
He's the maintenance director, guys.
Well, you're the one that's in there every day, and
it's endless. We can spend as much money as much as we get. I can put it in facilities.
do you think the 700 be able to do that every year?
I think the 700 is a minimum number. I want to go less than that. If that's a fair answer. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of growth coming our way. I think we're outdated. I mean, our drinking fountains are obsolete. The dry valve system that we have to change out is obsolete. Things go by pretty fast. Our outbuildings at the junior high, the list goes on and on. We can spend as much as as we want, and
So perhaps we're at a point where we've had 20-year-old schools and maybe the first couple of years could catch up on some of that if we had some money, and then maybe taper off a little after that once we update some of the obsolete things.
I don't know about tapering off. I know that our two newest schools are 20 years old, and we should do a major upgrade every 30 years. And maybe on those particular schools, I mean, like we've spoke, maintenance doesn't stop. But there's needs throughout the whole district. We have so many schools that we need to prepare for growth. We need to be able to have safe facilities. We need to get this 2019, and we have our security is weak. We can do as much as we want, but if we were to pass a bond for a new building, we still have to take care of our buildings that we have, or it's all for nothing. I don't know about tapering off. I don't know about taking the foot off the gas. I think we need to just keep.
Well, yeah, my only point was that we're kind of at a 20-year plateau in the boilers and everything.
Sure.
And so maybe when we got that caught up, we have another 20 years of not quite so much catch up to do. Just maintenance, not catch up.
Yeah, I would hope.
Well, I like the idea of dividing the two for a couple of different reasons. One reason is that it seems like it would be easier to show the public exactly how their money was spent. The Carberry needed this, we spent it on that. And I just think that it just adds to the transparency. I think it'd be easy to do. And I think people might have various opinions as to whether we need a new high school and this type of thing. But I don't think there's much discussion or differences of opinion that, boy, our school teach some upgrade. All you got to do is look at the outside of this building. So I think maintenance and operations is a lot easier sell than new buildings.
Madam Chair?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mr. Rush, is this something you're asking for a decision on tonight?
No, I'm not. It's a decision we'll need to make probably at the next board meeting. We have to make the decision before April 1. You got to do it before. You can't do it at. You're gonna have to do it in March.
So we have till March.
At your latest
At
date.
the latest date.
April 1 is the date that we have to send it to the county. We can't make the decision the day before and send it to the county. We're gonna have to give them a couple weeks and stuff, but yeah.
Just some items I have written down just to kind of address the elephant in the room to regard to any kind of proposal, which I absolutely appreciate your expertise in the field, and that a decision is being brought before this board because our facilities are in dire need of improvements and being current and more than anything safe. Is the climate. Obviously there's a recall effort going on out there, so this could potentially fall on the same ticket as that. Communications is a huge concern of mine because right now within the district, I don't see a clear, concise, and consistent communication plan to the greater community. If there is one, please point me to it. So, in our next budget cycle, I was definitely an advocate for finding a budgetary line item room to employ a communications director. And just to compare, with our city, the leadership of the city writes a monthly column in the Gazette, and one of the council people writes a monthly column in the Messenger. So the communication is consistent and concise and objective. I will give them that. Also, there is a committee, a facilities committee, and they're currently working on a survey. So that is an attempt to communicate with the greater public. I think that was one of the digs with the last bond proposal, was not including the greater community in having some input on the direction of what they were going to be voting on. I see that as a step in the right direction to communicate with the community. So I'd ask that possibly, I don't know the time frame when they'll be ready to do that, but that this option be one of the items on that survey. And then buildings, my question is, to Mike's point, the buildings are existing, they need to be maintained. But is this going to confuse the voting public if our greater goal is to pass a bond? We're asking them to invest in $7 million over 10 years. And some of those larger line items are to go into a few of the facilities we don't even know will be standing in a few years if we do go for a bond. And then lastly, I see in the presentation, there's reference to building a CTE building. And I believe one of the advantages to the program that we currently partner with is that they have an entirely different funding source, which comes from the state and not from the local Jim County taxpayer. So I would hate to double tax the Jim County taxpayer when they have the ability to, through their funding sources, to build a building that they need for their facility moving forward. And that's all I have.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Rush, I appreciate the presentation, and it's a lot of information for us, and I appreciate that you're not asking us to make a decision tonight. As we talked about last month, I do think that having a special meeting, perhaps later this month, where this is on, this is the primary focus of that meeting, to have a discussion and invite some public input on the perspective. My concern, candidly, I have similar concerns as Trustee Jenkins on the climate in May and some antagonism in the community on those issues, and what we could be doing if we do split this is leading to some further confusion with the voters without really an education campaign. I'm all for it. I mean, I'll tell you, I think I'm all for even more money than even that you've mentioned, based upon what I've done research-wise and looking at numbers. On the staffing side, on the M&O, I quite frankly think that should be looked at. I had some questions on the numbers. The current staffing on our M&O, you have almost 400,000, but the number of employees didn't make sense to me that it was almost 400,000 for the employees that were identified, but those are getting into the weeds, and I don't need to do that. But if we need to look at in the district, if we have some other staffing needs that are not being met, that are critical to better preparing our students, I'd be in favor of that being included. So I guess what I'm getting to is a bigger, longer discussion with the ability to ask more questions and perhaps receive more information, and also, quite frankly, hear from the community, give them a chance to come and give their thoughts on this. We've received some communication already from a patron on this, and that should be made part of the record, I think. And I again, I think it's exciting. I'm in favor of it. I do have some concerns, as Mr. Trustee Jenkins said, is where are we at of the Facilities Committee? I know that's on the agenda later tonight, to Mr. Rush, for you to give us a report on the Facilities Committee and where that's at. But I do think there's a place for that conversation to be in part of this discussion, so we don't have that criticism out there in the community voting no against this, perhaps when we have a bigger discussion on, are we going to run a $20, $30, $40 million bond, or whatever the Facility Committee might make a recommendation for. So I guess at the end of the day, I'm advocating for we identify in a couple of weeks another meeting with some opportunity to keep talking about this.
Okay. I will say, one of the things you need to think about this is, if we don't pass 1.4.
Oh, right.
We are laying off, we're not laying off this many, but it's an easy way to think about it. 1.4 million is 28 teachers. Okay. I mean, and 80% of our funding is staffing. So 1.4 million is a huge cut to our budget. And we did it once and then came back and passed it in August. So that data is actually on the website. So I think it's important to know that we really do need these funds, and we can argue about why we need these funds. But when you're the lowest funded state in the nation, when you're half or less than the national average right now is pretty close to $11,000 per student, and we're funded at from the state at under $5,000 per student. I mean, it's the challenge that we face, so.
Yeah,
I agree. Let's have the meeting.
Well,
Argue with that at all.
Madam Chairman, Mr. Rush, I would be surprised if anybody in this board is not in favor of authorizing another levy in one form or the other, and that we understand it needs to be at least 1.4 million. I can't believe any of my colleagues would think that is not a good idea. Because if we look at the budget now, as your point is you've tried to make the point, we can't operate $1.4 million less than we have now. I mean, there's just no way. And so it's not a matter of that it needs to pass. We just have to make sure that the right information is out there, and that because we can't be in a situation where it doesn't pass.
Well, and I think that is the debate, also part of the debate. That's why the number one question was, even though I shouldn't have had one in it, but do we divide one? Because dividing it might make more confusion.
Right.
Because we've been doing this for quite a few years. Actually, the first one was passed in, I think it was 2009, before I came, and it was for putting air conditioning in the domes. So we've been using these 2-year maintenance and operation levies for facilities for quite a while.
Mr. Rush, when are you going to have that list that you're talking about putting together that finished of what has been accomplished over the last several years?
I could fire that out to you tonight. I'm sorry. I didn't get it in the packet. Mike sent it to me and I got to play with it and do the editing on it just yesterday. So I didn't have time to get it in the packet, but I can send that out to the board.
Tomorrow would be soon.
Tomorrow, it's done. I mean, I just haven't got it sent out. I sent it to anybody in the community too. It's not, just, these are major projects. That's one of the things I don't know what the definition of really major projects are, but when we get into any project that's numbers, but our maintenance staff do a huge number of projects which are just done on a daily basis. We're changing lights, we're changing switches, we're I don't know, just constantly out there working. So so these are projects that we're talking that are larger. Okay. You want to pick a date for a meeting?
Yeah. Jefferson, do you have something?
Oh, no, yeah, Madam Chair, I just had a question. Since it is on our agenda listed as an action item, do we need to make a motion for continuance?
We don't. One of the things that you don't have to actually act on anything that says action item. It's just that if you're going to have a chance of acting, you put that on there, but you don't have to. All right, actually do it. And this is a new law I've been learning this year, to be honest with you. So you always learn something new as you go through life.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think a meeting would be neat to have. So the next board meeting's on the Valentine's Day.
Not even.
No?
It's the Wednesday, so it's the 13th now.
Oh, you're right.
It's 10 to 13th then. Okay.
Madam Chairman, is the 30th, Wednesday, the 30th, an option?
Yes, I have that open.
Mr. Rush?
Yeah, I was hoping you were going to say the week before, which isn't, but the 30th is an option.
Jefferson, does that work, the 30th of January?
Yeah, let you know where I need to be and when.
So here, we need a time.
6 o'clock, 7 o'clock? 7?
How long a meeting we gonna have?
Say a couple hours?
Let's limit it to 2 hours.
2 hour
So
meeting?
7 to 9.
7
Or
to
do you
9?
need it for longer?
No.
District office.
What time, Madam Chairman?
7 o'clock here at the district office on January 30th, Wednesday.
This will be an information meeting, or what are we talking about?
Informational meeting on the upcoming levy.
And anything else that might be added to the agenda.
I'd encourage us to keep pretty tight on it. And if we're gonna have some testimony from other people, we're gonna have to limit that so that we have time to talk about it, so.
Just so the board's aware, that's parent-teacher conferences.
January 30, right? January 30.
There's they meet more than one night, so.
They do.
Is it Wednesday, Thursday, Friday?
It's Wednesday and Thursday from 5 to 8 at the secondaries.
We have a short recess.
You want to stop for a recess?
Madam Chairman, is that okay?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I just wanted you to
Thank
know.
you, yeah. That cuts 1 hour into that event, but. Was that a decision?
Yes. So January 30th, Wednesday at 7 to 9.
We'll take a brief recess.
Okay, brief recess.
Board dates.
Yeah.
To informational items. We have scheduling training dates and topics for board training. So this was on last month's agenda, and so we put it on this month because it's the start of our new year. First of all, I called the ISBA and I remembered Day on the Hill training is coming up in February, the 18th and 19th through the ISBA. And I have the flyer here if anybody wants to look at it. I have never been to this specific training.
And I think the registration.
And the registration is live, so
yeah, I got the
if
email.
you're
today.
interested, go online and
You can let me
bring down
know actually, and I'll do it for you.
Madam Chair, Madam Clerk, is there potentially is there a digital copy of it that or should we just get a copy of?
You can go on ISBA's website.
Okay.
And
send it. I have an email I can send.
Okay. And it's there under events. But, Mr. Rush, could you explain what Day on the Hill is?
So Day on the Hill is a time for board members to meet with legislators and to talk about legislative issues. So there's a special session with both House Ed and Senate Ed where you go meet with them. They also recommend that board members maybe go have lunch with their legislator or something like that. There is trainings around. I don't know what all the trainings are. Oftentimes the trainings around lobbying kind of type things and working with the legislature from that aspect of it. It's generally a day and a half, I think is what it is. So, so I think you come in on Monday, meet with House Ed on Monday afternoon, and then Senate Ed Tuesday morning usually, or something. It's that type of a schedule, and then there's some training available around it.
So I just wanted to share with the board that training is available. One of the trainings that I talked with ISBA about, I emailed them a couple times and asked them if the Emmett School Board has ever taken training in Idaho Open Meeting Law. They do teach this. I have found, and I talked with this specific workshop with Amy White, our board attorney, and I found a YouTube video on Idaho Open Meeting Law that I've been listening to. It's a great resource. It's Brian Kane, the Assistant Attorney General. They're about little 18, 20-minute. They're five tapes. So Amy wanted me to throw that out.
Can you send us a link for that?
Yeah, you just go to YouTube and type in. I'll send it to you.
This link.
Okay.
Thank you.
In the meantime, I emailed David Brinkman at the ISBA, and he said to talk to the board, and we can make our schedule accommodate their needs. Usually, I suggest they come up with 2 to 3 dates. We can do day or evening, and we can do any day of the week to meet their needs. Plan to do the training for 3 hours. The dates that he cannot do are January 15th, 23rd, and then in February 18th, 19th, 20th, and 25th. The 2 that Amy and I went over with are Idaho Open Meeting Law and oversight versus overstepping. So she thought those were 2 good trainings that we could look into taking. Also, I emailed our auditor, Mr. Zweigert, if I'm pronouncing it right, and asked him if he could come over and do a workshop on school audits, if that was something that he does. And he said that he can come over, just talk to the business manager or your superintendent, and he's happy to come over. And so we have that option as well, or addition to. So I think we need to get a training, because we have, I think it's $6,600 in training money that we can use. Is any of those options
as far as I'm concerned, they all sound very beneficial. And if we're ever questioned on the fact that we haven't sought training or received training, then nobody can say that if we take all those trainings. So I appreciate you looking into it and finding it out. And if you can possibly put it in a chronological order and send it to us, then we can, we have that information to prove it.
Yeah, I asked them if they had a historical spreadsheet to keep track, and he didn't know if they went back that far, but coming back from the holiday, he got this to me yesterday, so. But I'll keep up on that so that we're not any of us are repeating, that something's new and fresh that we all take it together.
The Idaho open meeting law was taught over at that convention.
Mm-hmm.
Was this the same one that he'd be teaching again? I took it. That's
right. Yes. That one, it was about an hour long.
Yeah. Less, 45 minutes, whatever. Yeah.
And maybe we could do, depending on, maybe we could do a couple on one evening. Maybe the Idaho open meeting law / oversight was overstepping all in one.
I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
And then have another one with the auditor.
A separate one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd also just like to throw it out there that if any of you are on social media and you log on or look up the Friends of the Library page, they're doing a Robert's Rules of Order training at the library, and I think it's, let's say, January 26th or something like that. It is for the youth of the community, but sometimes that's the best way we kind of absorb the information is when we collaborate with the youth on stuff like that. So I'm just throwing it out there.
February 18th.
Madam Chairman, I guess I would make a suggestion that we all send you and Madam Clerk and Mr. Rush our availability,
okay.
Separately, and then you kind of go from that and work with the ISBA and schedule accordingly. Because I think going through calendars tonight is just going to be unnecessarily time consuming. And I think if we got you our availability for the next 90 days, that could help find a date that works for everybody.
Okay, that sounds good.
Are we looking mainly evenings, I assume?
I can only do evenings, okay. Yes.
That's what I'll let you know.
Earliest for me would probably 4:35. So if you could email me your dates and times, and then I will coordinate with David, and he gave me kind of his schedule, and we can knock that out, and then I'll be up to date with everybody. Okay, next item, response to investigative report. We had some patrons send in some questions they had, so I kind of combined all the questions. I worked with our legal counsel, and we wanted to read this document tonight. There's 5 questions with 5 answers. Question 1, what are the repercussions of the investigation? The district learned that with regard to the issues addressed, the district's personnel were acting within the parameters of the law, the code of ethics, as well as district policy. The board learned that there are some practices and procedures, policies that we can improve upon, as well as some areas that we would like to enhance training. Addressing all of these issues is good for both the personnel and students of the district. 2, was there any legal action, criminal or civil, taken as a result of the investigation? There were no legal actions, criminal or civil, taken as a result of the investigation, as there were no findings that would support such action. There are no violations of law, the code of ethics for Idaho professional educators, or violations of district policy that would warrant any type of legal action. 3, what benefits did the investigation provide to the Emmett School District? The board learned that there are some practices, procedures, and policies that we can improve upon. The board learned that there are some areas for enhanced training. The board received information from its employees regarding various personnel matters. This type of information is always important in addressing best practices, procedures, and policies, as well as the training needs and desires of the district's employees. Addressing all of these issues is good for both personnel and students of the district. What benefits did the investigation provide to the education and welfare to the children of Emmett School District? The board learned that there are no violations of law, the Code of Ethics for Idaho professional educators, or violations of district policy with regard to personnel, and to the extent that such likewise applies with regard to students. The board learned that there are some practices, procedures, and policies that can be improved upon, and there are some areas of training that need to be enhanced for the school's personnel. The board learned that making some changes to meet best practices will aid in the relationships of the school board's personnel and community. Such will only foster a more positive environment, which is certainly in the best interest of students and their educational activities. What were the action items that the investigator provided to the district, and how are they going to be placed into policy? There was a recommendation that the district adopt a policy addressing nepotism in the workplace. It was recommended that this policy should clearly identify hiring procedures and the supervision of family members working for the district. The board will be discussing greater consistency and best practices in the hiring process in general. Assurance that nepotism, anti-conflict policies are followed in the hiring process. The board worked on Policy 320, Family Relations in the Workplace, and this is on the agenda this evening. Training for committee, personnel, and hiring committees as to process appropriate questions and considerations and matters of that nature. Stronger document retention regarding the hiring process and consistency in such retention of records. Confidentiality safeguards being emphasized. Assuring that all legal requirements are being followed, such as things like Idaho Code 33-1210, background checks, and veterans preference considerations. It was recommended that the district implement a practice that personnel in the HR department conduct exit interviews of personnel who are leaving the district, all administrative and long-term employees. It was recommended that these interviews be conducted at the time of separation. The board needs to discuss this matter and make a decision as a board as to whether or not we would like to have this done, how to do such to obtain accurate information and protect confidentiality.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you for the statement. If it benefits anyone out there, it would benefit me just as equal. I just like the record to show, as far as any investigation, being a new board member, I have not been privy to that information or had the ability to view any kind of report. So that may be the same for my trustee, my colleague to my right here. But as far as that's concerned, I'm just speaking on my behalf.
Okay. All right. I lost my place. Okay. Let's move on. Okay, action item. Resignations, retirement, new hires, changes in job status.
So, Madam Chairman, one of the individuals being hired on this time is Mrs. Joyner. That's Stephen Joyner's spouse. And so I wanted the board to do it. Actually, I told the board chair if I got late like this tonight and I forgot about it, she was supposed to remind me because I might be asleep. But we certainly followed the processes. Mr. Joyner's had nothing to do with this. This is a hire at Carberry Elementary School. The only objection I had is I don't know who's going to make my coffee now, and so I'm concerned about that. She used to work at Starbucks.
Madam Chairman, I would move that we approve the new hires, transfers.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, moving on. Idaho satisfaction surveys. we had talked about doing our own survey as a board. We talked about this as the information that came out of the town hall meeting, and if we want to do our own climate survey. I did, again, talk to David at ISBA. They have done surveys like this with other schools, where they set up the survey through the Survey Monkey, and then all of the results go to the ISBA, and then we have to come up. And so he is getting back into the swing of things, and so he said that they may have some questions that it already had a survey made, so we're gonna look at that. Does anybody have any questions? Do you still want to do the climate survey?
Yeah, I'd like to know what the feeling of the teachers are, what's going on.
So he asked
I'm
me,
in a place of ignorance, so.
yeah. He asked me with the intent in the audience, and so what I threw out there, I said teachers, between teachers and building principals, teachers and administrators, including director of curriculum, special ed, superintendent, director of technology, and also to ask the same similar questions to classified staff and the relationship with those listed above. Ideas on improvement and maybe a comment section at the end. And I said, I can throw this out there to the board, but it needs to be a board survey, just not a Jody survey. So.
I assume we're gonna, excuse me, Madam Chairman, if we're going to do something like that, wouldn't it go to every employee of the district? Including janitors and bus drivers and.
Right, so.
Mechanics and.
Right, so in here, in the classified staff, I listed janitors,
okay.
Janitors, librarians, lunch ladies. So I can continue to work with David and.
Yeah. Is there a cost factor for the district to do this?
Is there?
Cost factor?
I don't believe so. I think Survey Monkey is free.
Well, I knew that was free, so it's okay. I have no issues.
So I can collect some more information and put a sample survey out. Present it next month.
Madam Chair, it's not only the things that you gave it as an example, but it also deal with safety, right? There could be some.
Sure. There's all kinds of surveys that I found online, school climate surveys, school staff. It can go on and on. I wouldn't want to do a 20 pager, but so I thought getting with the ISBA, if they've done this type of thing before, we can narrow down the amount of questions. So I can work with David at ISBA and put something together and present it next board meeting. Sound good?
I'd like that.
Okay. And then backing up, Mr. Rush, the Idaho satisfaction surveys are the ones that the state are doing, and it's.
Yes.
And when will those be?
They're going to be around ISAT testing, so March or somewhere. I don't know. They haven't given us the dates of their surveys. I think you're going to do a survey. The first thing you need to decide is what your purpose is. You're right. You can ask hundreds of questions, but you need to know what do we really want to discover, because you have to focus the questions on something.
Madam Chair, Mr. Rush, on the Idaho satisfaction surveys, have we seen an illustration of what those look like, or what the?
I had them in the questions in the board packet
Last month.
Last month? Yeah, in the board packet.
I'll go back and look through.
So there's actually a student survey and a staff survey.
Okay.
Is there a parent survey too?
Is there a parent survey?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Carter had his.
Oh, yes, sorry.
There will also be accreditation surveys for the high school for students, staff, and parents also. So when we have those results, we will present those to you.
Thank you. Okay, I will have that on next month's agenda. Okay, moving on. We have district reports.
Chairman, in the time, I'd like to skip some. How's that? Unless you want me to go through every item. Nobody seems to care. Okay. Couple things, and I'll do this real quick. There is a new funding formula out there that's going to go to the legislature. I throw it out there just so that you begin to understand it. You can look through the packet and look at that. If you look through the packet, you'll notice that Payette River Technical Academy loses, I don't have it up in front of me, so you'll look and get me the exact numbers, but about $140,000 in the new funding formula, and the district loses about $160,000 in the new funding formula. And there's some other things going on. The Payette River Technical Academy one is one that concerns me probably the most. I put in, again this month, average daily attendance from where we are, but for Payette River Technical Academy right now, we actually assign Payette River 195 of our students for average daily attendance, which gives us a 12 divisor, and we share the money on those students. 141 of those, 141.50 is the actual Payette River Technical Academy's FTE of a student, full-time equivalent student. And so when the new funding formula, they may lose money and only be funded on 141.5. What we don't have yet in the formula, a lot is a lot. We don't know a lot, but we're trying to make sure we ask all the questions at this point. So that could mean a considerable loss in funds, not counting the 140,000 that's already built into the formula. Now they say they're going to hold everybody harmless, but what that means, we don't all know right now. So questions on that?
They say something about a 3-year hold harmless period.
They do talk about a 3-year hold harmless period. The interesting, we actually looked at the numbers. We had an extensive meeting today and looked at the numbers, and it kind of depends what's happening to your district. You may get 3 years hold harmless, but hold harmless doesn't mean, it may mean that you just get the same money you got last year. So you have no money for raises or anything else. But some of us argue really isn't holding harmless. It's, but
And this will start next year, the new funding formula.
their plan right now is the legislature to pass it this year, and it would not start till FY20, right? FY21. FY21. Fiscal year ends the last month of the year. So it wouldn't be next school year, it would be the year after. But I just put it in there, and I will provide more information as we learn more. Legal action item is currently pending against the district. I was asked to put, I can't get it in there. There are only really 2 items. There's a tort claim concerning the bus incident in April 12, 2018. And it was filed on October 8th. And then there's for some reason when I go down, it flips down. The other is the fees lawsuit that is against all school districts in Idaho. And I believe there's a hearing the 15th of January for the fees lawsuit that the lawyers have. But that's, the hope is that our lawyers will have us dismissed, or the judge will dismiss us out of the fees lawsuit. We don't have anybody in our district that people that have filed this suit are in Pocatello and Blackfoot. So there's a good argument that we're really not a part of it. The other is the logo. I will mention. One of the things that, if you'll remember, we got a notice from University of Yukon to develop a new logo. Stop using theirs. And so we are at a committee working on developing a new logo, and our principal's handing out the logo that committee's selected. Matt Pollard, his mother is sitting here in the audience, has worked extensively with the committee to determine the logo and that work. He is at the University of Utah.
So here are a couple of samples of what we're talking about with our logo. We've put together a committee, had some community people and some coaches and different people sitting on it. We've looked at a wide range of huskies. I'm probably the one that said, okay, we got to have a husky that looks like he's kind of mean. But these are some of the samples that Matt has come up with for us. You can see some of them where, if you look at the back where the head is incorporated with the E, that could include ESD, EHS, EMS, the abbreviations for the other schools and so forth. But here's a couple of examples that you guys can take a look at. We would want to propose probably having more than one of these approved and go forward then to use that as the husky for the district.
And then at some point, the kids are gonna get to vote on this too?
We're not here for them. We've not talked about that, but we could definitely.
Be interesting to see what the students thought.
We could do that. I'll have my ASB put something together. Maybe they can report that to you next month.
I didn't know if the board wanted this to be an action item for the board, or the board wanted just the high school and that group to pick it and move forward. My recommendation is let them pick it and the committee to pick it. Well, we've had community members and other people do it. We probably ought to ask if
we've had kids look at them too.
Yeah.
We did ask kids to submit samples, but we did have some art kids that took it on.
We've had lawyers involved and other things to make sure we're legal and just all that kind of stuff. And there are some times when I think that these ought to just be done as a management.
Madam Chair and Mr. Carter, I'd like to commend Matt and the committee and yourself. I think that this is excellent, and we didn't have to pay $90,000 for it like Boise State did with their logo. So we're off to a good start.
Well, and I'll be honest, my wife has one of our former logos that she calls the Pomeranian. So we're glad to be done with the Pomeranian. Or the lab, or so.
Golden Retriever.
Golden Retriever. So.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman, Madam Chairman, I don't know if on the agenda tonight how this was characterized, whether it was just informational or it wasn't. I mean, just in response to Mr. Rush's question, I think it's interesting and kind of fun. I don't know that the board needs to approve it. That's my personal opinion. But if the board wants to be involved in this and things, I guess fine. But I would vote no because I vote, as my wife I think is watching, vote for the Golden Retriever, a whole new branding. So, I'm fine with it not coming back.
We're not changing the spelling or the dot. I tell you, that's the only thing I do know.
Did you know where Huskies came from originally?
I don't.
The first superintendent of the Emmett schools was from the University of Washington.
Oh.
That was way back in the turn of the century. Now, why are we being run off by the Yukon?
We should run them off.
What's their beef? Go ahead, Wayne.
So, well, I honestly question that, but I'm probably the one guilty for getting us in this mess because it was the Boise State University was playing UConn. It was Superintendent's Night on the Blue. I had my shirt on, proudly wearing my blue shirt with a Husky on it. I walked out on the field and I got a camera on me on the big screen in front of everybody. And a week later, we got a letter saying we should stop using the Husky. They have it, they're copyrighted. Why they care about Emmett, I think it's because Boise State beat them. I don't know any other reason why they would care. Wow. I don't know. But
it's all merchandising, right?
It's merchandising. And there was an article just the other day we were reading in one of the national magazines saying that all the universities are doing this to schools. So I think I'm guilty. I shouldn't have been so proud of my Husky, but I was. and I still have the shirt and I'm still wearing it. So don't worry about that.
So we don't have any copyrights?
We will have copyrights on this when we're finished.
Just curious, did you have more submissions than this?
Yeah.
And then it kind of narrowed down? The committee narrowed.
Well, it didn't just narrow down. We sent it back for tweaking quite a few times. For example, we had one where it showed teeth. We had,
and I'm staying entirely out of it. I was talking with a board member tonight. He was telling me something that I guess is on the on the form. I've never seen one. I don't want to see one. I won't see one. If somebody brings one to me, I'm not going to look at it. So I'm going to stay out of it. But I've said from day one, the problem with recalls is it tears communities apart. And we should not be tearing our community apart. We have to stop spending all of our time trying to find bad things. We have to have good systems. We have to do good jobs. We have to work hard. All of that has to be in there. But if we spend all of our time trying to find bad things, we will never be successful. And I think we can be a very successful district. We have a tremendous staff, tremendous people here, and a great community. But we also have a community that has the reputation. When I came here, I was said, people said, why do you want to go to Emmett? They just run their superintendents off. And it's a reputation of the community. What I will tell you, in the 8.5 years, almost 9 years that I've been here in Emmett, I found a fabulous community that I love living in. I love the people. I like the community. I think it's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise. For me now, it's grandkids. And it's worth investing our time and effort and energy in. And I just would encourage the community to look for some positive things, and let's see how we can positively move together. Enough said there, I guess. I was going to try to write it out tonight, and I've been so busy the past week. It's just not one of the things I ever got to. But that's where we are. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we have Herta report.
Okay, I'll keep this brief. The meeting's not till tomorrow night, but I'll report on the December 11th and 21st meetings that were held. From the December 11th meeting, we had Patty O'Malley made a presentation. She's the business person. There is a Business Professionals of America event. It's going to be this Saturday at the high school. We have 20 students from our facility are going to participate. There are 140 events. I understand 70 to 80 students will be there in all. So that's about all I know about it.
This is more or less their district tournament,
right,
to qualify for state for business professionals in America.
And then we also had Ellen Bromgard, the family consumer science specialist teacher, make a presentation. Let's see, minor things. They worked on the charter, looked at plans for a Purdy building and possible financing for it, talked about purchasing some buses. There was a discussion about how Purdy's listed on the Emmett School District website, and we did some tweaking to that. Crystal worked on that and got some pictures up and some things that made it look a little more appealing. And then on the December 21st meeting, we met and agreed to buy two 15-passenger buses to help get the students back and forth to the classes, to the off-site classes and to the competitions, and be maintained by the auto shop. And I think the drivers are going to be either the staff of PERTA, I don't know which staff are going to be named. They've agreed to get two buses. Used buses from Denver someplace. That's it.
I think, okay, moving on. We have our policies, or do you want to go to the next meeting?
Oh, it's fine.
Okay. Okay, policy 566.
So, Madam Chair, the question from the board at the last reason why we put it forward is this policy says there's a procedure that we are to follow. We have a draft procedure, and it's 4 pages long. I this week met with our administrative staff, and I've asked that draft procedure be reviewed by our counselors, administrators, psychs, and we have 2 groups, one at the middle school and one at the high school for suicide prevention, to make sure that procedure fits with what we do within the district. And to be honest with you, I encourage them to find a way to shorten it from 4 pages. People don't remember 4 pages of information. So if we can make it a little cleaner, I think that would be helpful to do it. All the staff are required to take training on suicide prevention, and within that training is actually procedures and what you need to do. So they're actually receiving training in that area. So this would just be the attachment to this policy. I could have just said, well, let's attach these 4 pages, but I felt it was much better to send it out and let people actually look at it and say, yeah, that's what we really want to do here. So that's where we are on this. So if you want to pass a policy, that's fine. It says there's a procedure. We're working on developing a procedure.
Madam Chairman, it would seem to me that if we're going to pass a policy that says we're going to follow the accompanying procedures, we really need the procedures in front of us at the same time. So I would move that we postpone this till a later time, and then put it together.
Second.
You don't have to actually vote for it.
No, just move it over.
Don't even have to move it. It's a recommendation at this point because it's not an actual action item.
Any other discussion?
I agree with Mr. Hamilton.
Okay, about 320.
Okay. And the next policy that we pulled from the agenda on the consent agenda to agenda was policy 320.
Madam Chair, would you like me to take it from here? Okay, so that policy 320 is family relations in the workplace, and as Chairman Harris had read as a response to the investigative report, this is one of the policies I interpret came out of the investigative report. For the community in the room and people on the World Wide Web, and basically pertinence to that, 2 paragraphs that kind of stand out are supervision. I'm reading that no employee shall be the immediate supervisor of any employee who is a family member within the 2nd degree as defined in this policy. Efforts will be taken to ideally have 2 layers of supervision between related staff member. Employees may be in a supervisory line with respect to a family member, provided that they are not the immediate supervisor and provided that they remove themselves from participating in any decision which impacts a family member's terms and conditions of employment. It goes on to say, as you can see up on the screen, in addition, employees and board members shall not participate in employment decisions concerning a family member or the position for which a family member has applied or currently holds. This includes, but is not limited to, decisions regarding hiring, employment status, reappointment, placement evaluation, pay rate, salary increases, promotion, tenure awards, promotion, demotion, discipline, transfer, layoff, and recall. Just reading that, of course, promotions repeated twice, so we could probably strike one of those. But just a couple of questions on that. I would either have for the chair or Mr. Rush is, as it says, legal references, it comes from Idaho Code section. So the question would be, this is pretty much verbatim from those sections, correct?
No, there actually isn't a lot of language in Idaho Code that relates directly for it. Maybe some of it. I'd have to go back and look and see what it is. But
okay.
This is actually more unique. We can pull up the code and see.
Yeah, and if in accordance with the convenience of time, we can do that, or if we want to continue it, that's perfectly all right too, because as you can see there, January 10th, 2019, today's date is essentially when we're looking at putting this into effect. And to my knowledge, we haven't had a policy in place prior.
Madam Chairman, I appreciate and removed off the consent agenda, and I do think that we should continue talking about it and perhaps move it to and put it on our next agenda. There is a statute that deals with this, and quite frankly, some of this policy is a little bit misplaced when you look at Idaho code as it relates, for instance, to school board members. There are certain situations where it's prohibited for school board members to have relatives working in the district, and the statute actually is a lot more. The statute is a little bit more definitive, and it is 74-401. I think right there is quoted. Well, that's just a general statute, but there is a statute dealing with this that is
School board members is in 33 something.
Yeah. So you're right. So there's another. It's in dealing with the board in 33, and so I think we should probably look at that. I think we should probably have that statute out as we look at this policy. And the other question I had, observation I had, is this is dealing with second degree. It doesn't deal with the first degree. It defines first degree, but it doesn't prohibit or deal, as I read it, how we're dealing with first degree relations.
This policy deals with both first and second degree. So for the purpose of this policy, shall we define the following? So this deals with both first and second degree. It deals with them the same way.
Well, if you scroll up, Wayne, right there. So any person who's a family member by blood or by marriage within the second degree of any board member.
It's poorly written.
I think the intent is to provide a roadmap here on
that. It should say first degree, though.
I think it's inferring that within the second degree includes the first. Because it goes into the definition.
Well,
probably not as clear written.
No, I mean, a family member within the second degree for purposes of policy shall be defined as the following existing relationships. I agree, Mr. Loftus, it could be all inclusive, but I think where it's separated out, it is confusing, and it would leave one reader to believe that a relationship in the first degree is permitted, and that we're really just dealing with those as defined in the second degree. But I think the intent is.
I think we ought to clean that language.
Yeah,
I agree with you.
So I appreciate it being pulled out. I think we just move it to the next agenda and let's get the statute next to it, and then we can have a good discussion and finalize it. So thank you.
Madam Chair. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. So going on, so the things that stick out to me are efforts, quote unquote, efforts will be taken in that first paragraph, second sentence. Efforts will be taken to ideally have 2 layers of supervision between a related staff member, to your guys' conversation in the first degree or second degree. And then it goes on, employees may be in a supervisory line with respect to a family member, provided that they are not the immediate supervisor, and that they remove themselves. But going back to the goal being 2 layers, I just want to make sure that within the district, because we do have a few examples, that there isn't a potential conflict of interest where, let's say, Mr. Rush, like what's our current policy? Who evaluates our principals?
I evaluate the principal.
Okay. And then who evaluates the educator?
The principal or vice principal evaluates the teacher.
Okay. So yeah, so my concern would be with the 2 layers, which is why I wanted to know if it mimics state code, is there is a potential conflict of interest if you have a assistant principal evaluating a teacher, but in turn you have a principal evaluating that assistant principal, if you can catch my drift. So it also, the policy talks to, if there's not 2 layers, then that would more or less move over to the board's jurisdiction for the evaluation to remove any potential conflict of interest that's not at least 2 layers within a direct line of supervision, if I'm interpreting that correct.
Yeah, the board can't evaluate teachers. You have to be certified. You have to,
no, and that's fine.
Training and others. So, but no. So if a vice principal is evaluating a teacher that is the principal's relative in your example. If any other personnel action needed to be done, the vice principal couldn't go to the principal and say, hey, I need you to make a decision on this. The vice principal would go to the superintendent at that point and make a decision, because you do not want, and I think the paragraph goes through and says the relative can't do, and it lists, as you said, it even lists one thing twice. It lists a bunch of items that person can do, so they aren't involved in that. And actually, in many of those areas, for example, salary is not set by, well, quite frankly, it's set by negotiations. It's a different process, so it isn't generally set. Now, for classified staff, it does get set.
Yeah, because obviously, there's a lot of parameters, as we talked about, placement, reappointment, and on down the line, which everyone can read. So I just feel the conversation was worthwhile on an optic level, because the policy is new and this is something that the investigative report discovered. So it's worth kind of throwing out there for the public and everybody to understand kind of what our goal and our direction is with it.
Madam Chairman, and I appreciate the comments, and I think they're spot on. There are things that we've talked about when we've talked about this before, in considering the situations that we currently have in the district, at least at the high school. I know that there's some processes in place. I think to Trustee Jenkins's point, I think the question is would it be a better practice that a vice principal or principal who's not in the chain of command in that district evaluate that teacher in that school? I think if I understood under that level, do we have a situation so that evaluator isn't in that same building hierarchy, if that's a possibility as we're developing this level of supervision and evaluation.
And you could do something like that. It gets tricky with one, if you're in a larger district, you got 2 high schools, and you can solve this problem easy, but it's tricky in that if you're just talking a formal evaluation, certainly that's a way to do it. But much of what we do in our school system is a continual process of improvement. You're continually working with people on how to get better. That gets tricky if you don't have somebody in the building doing that. But I think the informal, we actually have a process to bring in another principal in, do an evaluation right now. If somebody has gotten a basic the year before, there's a second evaluation by somebody outside the building. That's actually in our negotiated agreement somehow. Good question. Good question.
Okay, so just to sum that up, the action, as I interpret it, or to paraphrase, is that we're going to look at the state code and reword some of it. Is that correct? Okay, and you don't need a motion to continue it. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, there's no further business. We need to make a motion to adjourn. Or do you have one more question?
I have one more thing to add. In consulting with the ISBA, they recommended that all of our agendas, the last item before adjournment, is that we have an item that says agenda items. So it's just out there in the clear that the board, if they have agenda items to put on the next agenda, that there's that open invitation for that to occur.
So you mean agenda items for next?
Yeah.
Okay, because so you can have a placeholder for something that
Sure.
is not going to be talked about, but that is different than, okay, so agenda items for.
Good idea.
Okay, thank you, Jefferson. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. I make that motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, I need everybody's notes, please. All of them.